can't change the past.
Hello everyone, welcome to What If Issei got betrayed by his harem and they went back in time movie. Before we start, please go support Roberto Torres 769 for writing that awesome fanfic. This is the translated version I made. There will be some mistaken characters' gender, but of course Issei is a male. Chapter 1 Suicide. Tell me, have you ever wanted to commit suicide? Just think about it for 5 minutes. Think about what your parents, siblings, cousins, friends, etc. would think. Imagine that the people you fought so hard for look at you with fear, hatred, fury, and resentment. Let's look at this somewhat cliché story, but one with great plot development. In a large mansion in Kuoh at night, one could see a somewhat neglected mansion with some bird droppings, withered plants, trees pleading for water, and an atmosphere of pure sadness and loneliness. Inside the mansion it looked the same. In the living room there were many bottles of golden apple cider, the mansion was very dirty, and the atmosphere very lonely and sad. The whole place was dirty because nobody had bothered to clean it. Inside a room, a dirty chestnut-haired man was seen, with long, dirty hair because he hadn't bathed, an unshaven beard, a very thin body due to self-inflicted malnutrition, and a gaze that showed no feelings, but only reflected sadness and regret. "Dragon. Partner, are you sure? You know it wasn't your fault," said the dragon. Issei. "I know, but knowing that he said as he began to cry. "Dragon. Partner, that bastard can't control you, it was inevitable that you would," said the dragon. Issei. "I know, but I hurt them with my own hand. I was the one who hurt them, and they hate me. I remember that look of fear and hatred towards me every day. Murayama and Caddis always looked at me like that, but I didn't care. But when they see me like this, I can't," he said while summoning Ascalon. "Dragon. My friend, think about it. Try talking to them again, give them a gift or a small token, try to get them to forgive you again," the dragon said, convincing his companion. Issei. "You think I didn't try? They're happy with him now. I have no proof to incriminate Ken, and besides, I'm just the same idiot I was in the past," he said while crying as he looked at Ascalon in his hands. Issei. "Again, I'm sorry, girls. I hope my brother can make you happy like I couldn't. I hope my death can make up for the harm and the wound I caused," he said, preparing Ascalon, who without thinking plunged the dragon slayer sword into his stomach. Issei was only suffering a slow and painful death. No one was there to cut off his head or to end his suffering more quickly. But Issei didn't care about that. He just wanted to die a slow and painful death. A gem emerged from Issei's arm, and it was Drag who looked on with sadness and pain at seeing his former partner like this. He couldn't end Issei's suffering because Issei had promised not to, nor could he call anyone else, since Issei had told him that trash like him shouldn't be saved. All Drag could do was stay and watch in pain as his companion died slowly and painfully. "Drag. Farewell, partner. I hope you find peace wherever you go," he said as he watched Issei's body turn neon green and shatter like glass little by little. Drag knew that Issei could no longer return to life because he had used the dragon slayer, and since he was a dragon, he would die without any possibility of reincarnation or resurrection. That was the curse for those dragons that were killed by the dragon slayer. Even Officer Great Red couldn't do anything to bring him back to life. They were lucky to bring him back once, but they couldn't bring him back again, especially since he killed himself with Ascalon. But how did Issei come to take this path? Well, let's jump back 2 years. Flashback 2 years ago. It was a beautiful morning where the birds were singing and the sun was shining brightly for everyone. The Hyoudou mansion looked beautiful, with blooming plants, vibrant trees, and a well-maintained grounds. Upon entering, you could see 2 gentlemen, one drinking a cup of coffee and the other preparing breakfast for everyone. In one room, there was a large bed where many beautiful women were asleep naked, along with a brunette who was hugging a redhead who was also asleep next to him, very close. That was Issei Hyoudou, who slowly awoke and, noticing his harem embracing him, smiled, especially upon seeing that beautiful redhead. She woke up slowly, and when they looked into each other's eyes, they moved closer and shared a kiss full of love and happiness. They all woke up and saw that scene and did the same as Issei, giving him his good morning kiss. So they all went to the bathroom, and after everything that had happened, Issei's perversion decreased a lot, although of course he still couldn't help but spy on his harem naked or bathing. But Issei didn't feel like doing that day, so he went to the living room where his mother was serving breakfast. Issei. "Good morning, Oka-san," he said as he sat down. "Mickey. Good morning Issei and the girls," she said while serving him his breakfast. Issei. "Taking a bath, today I have to go to the academy, I'm still paying for what those idiots Mitsuda and Motohama did," he said while finishing eating and leaving. And so he says goodbye to both of them, unaware that someone would come into his life to ruin it. Issei had gone to the academy and the first thing he did was clean the place because he was punished by having to clean all the classrooms for 2 months. But Issei, being part dragon, finished in record time and upon completion, he went to his locker and waited in his classroom while playing a video game. At the Hyoudou house, a boy with dark brown hair, brown eyes, and a good physique approached. He knocked on the door and Mickey opened it. When she saw the boy, she gave a big smile and hugged him. "Mickey. Ken, my son," she said while hugging Ken, who returned the hug. "Ken. Hi mom, I'm back," he said as they both entered. Upon seeing his son, Garu dropped his newspaper and hugged him. "Garu. Son, look how you've grown," he said with a smile while hugging Ken. Then the girls come downstairs and see Ken, who does the same. "Ken. Oka-san, who are these young ladies?" he said as he looked at them and all of them without exception were beautiful. "Mickey. Son, we have a lot to talk about," she said as she sat him down and introduced him to each of the girls. The girls introduced themselves politely and all of them without exception said they were Issei's girlfriends. Ken feigned surprise, but in reality, he was envious since they both had something in common. They both wanted a harem. But when Ken saw that Issei had achieved it, he couldn't help but feel envious. So the girls decide to stay and not go to class and meet Issei's older brother. Ken was impressed by the supernatural and Issei's adventures. Ken felt envious of Issei because everything he heard about him made him even more envious. One of the differences between Ken and Issei was that Issei was a pervert but admitted it, whereas Ken was also a pervert, but the difference was that he didn't show it openly, but rather hid it. Furthermore, Issei had returned to Japan because he was wanted for raping many girls by drugging, deceiving, blackmailing, or threatening them. He had a pretty boy mask, but in reality he was a vile rat who wouldn't hesitate to grape any girl he saw in his path. Ken spoke very politely to the girls, who did the same. The girls looked at Ken and he was a copy of Issei, only taller, more muscular, and more handsome, but they still loved Issei just the way he was. An hour later. Issei was seen returning home. He was very surprised that the girls hadn't gone to class, so when he arrived he saw his parents, the girls, and to his surprise Ken. "Issei. Brother," he said as they both hugged in a familiar way. Issei had a happy smile and Ken was just faking a happy one. So Issei and Ken talked and Issei told Ken everything he had experienced and all his adventures. Ken was more envious of Issei because he was God's favorite because he didn't have what that loser had. Ken. "Wow, that's impressive, brother, but I'm really interested in magic. Could you teach me a little?" he said, but Lefay spoke first. "Lefay. I can teach you, Issei-sama must be tired after so much school," she said excitedly, since she would be teaching magic to someone else. Issei. "It's true, Mitsuda and Motohama spied on the kendo girls again and blamed me. Luckily, the cameras didn't see me and now they're cleaning up," he said as he went to the bathroom. "Rias. I'll come with you. All this paperwork is tiring and I need to relax with my Issei," she said while taking his hand. "Akeno. Don't hog him, President. Remember, I want to relax with my not too," she said while hugging Issei's arm, burying his arm in her breasts. So they both left and Lefay arrived with a mountain of books and began to train Ken, unaware that she had made the worst mistake of her life. 1 year later. Ken met each of Issei's girls and couldn't believe that Issei had all those women and still hadn't had sex with any of them. The furthest Issei could go was receiving a blowjob from Akeno, but no further since Issei told her that he made a promise that he wouldn't sleep with anyone until his wedding day. During that time, Ken met Lefay, who realized how clumsy he was. He realized that Lefay was performing spells and magic that resulted in something else. Like the time he made him drink a potion that was supposed to make him stronger but ended up being a laxative, leaving him in the bathroom for 6 hours. Ken got along better with girls, especially Rias. Ken only looked at her as a piece of meat, but he knew that sooner or later he would own her. Thus, no one distrusted Ken, least of all Issei, since he trusted Ken because he would never think that Ken was planning anything. How wrong he was. After that, thanks to Lefay, he knew very powerful magic, and to Yasaka, who introduced him to the Japanese gods who gave him books to become more powerful. And to top it all off, Office gave him several ancient books, making Ken very strong, but he still couldn't reach Issei's level. "Ken. It's time for my plan," he said with an arrogant smile. Thus Ken, with his knowledge of magic and spells and the trust of the girls and Issei himself, began his plan. Ken told them several bad things Issei did in the past, like in his 3rd year of middle school, how he and his friends spied on the girls back then. The girls didn't think much of it, but when they found out that Issei and his friends had spied on them while they were showering and standing under the showers, it bothered them a little. Ken showed them photos of several naked high school girls and talked about what happened that day, but the truth was that Issei hadn't taken them, Ken had. Ken told them several times that Issei only wanted them for their fame and bodies, but the girls didn't believe him. However, some words Ken said left a mark on them. Ken. When he loses control, you'll see he'll do something you'll never forgive. He said very seriously. The girls thought about it a lot, and as time passed, Issei began to develop a jealous and possessive attitude towards them. Issei told them that he didn't want to see them talking to Ken anymore, much less getting close to him. The girls were confused, especially when he lunged at Ken and beat him up just for talking to Rias and Yasaka. Issei received 2 hard slaps and a severe scolding. Asia. We're sorry for what Issei-san Ken did, she said while healing him. Ken. No problem, Issei is a dragon, it's probably normal for him to be jealous, he said while giving them a smile. Rias. I guess you're right, she said while looking at him. Ken. Girls, if one day you don't like what Issei does, you can come to me. I'd be happy to listen. He said with a smile. Rias, Yasaka, and Asia all felt a heartbeat in their chests, and they were grateful. Later, Issei became more jealous, as he wouldn't allow any of his girls to get close to Ken. Later, the girls distanced themselves from Issei because of their jealousy, and they felt that their relationship with Issei was becoming very toxic. Ken. I'm glad you accepted my invitation, Rias. He said with a smile, looking at Rias, who was very well dressed. Rias. Of course, let's go to our date, Rias-san. She said as they both walked towards their date. Rias felt very good being by Ken's side. With Issei it was nice too, but her jealousy had led her to doubt their relationship. He was no longer the Issei she knew. The Issei she fell in love with had disappeared. Rias. Thinking, maybe I should give Issei a chance, he is territorial after all, as Ken says. She thought as she began her date with Ken. Some time later, no girl slept with Issei anymore and he crossed a line that no one thought he would cross. And that's when she slapped Asia and Kuoh hard. That day, Yasaka gave Issei a severe beating that almost left him half dead, followed by another beating from Rias along with Ken. Issei wasn't healed by any of them, and luckily he had a phoenix tear. If it weren't for that, he would be in the hospital today. Yasaka and Kuoh left the Hyoudou mansion, and Kuoh didn't understand why her father had done that to her. He wasn't like that, and she was very suspicious of why. Kuoh asked to return to the Hyoudou mansion, but Yasaka refused, and instead, she could do nothing. Ken knew his plan was going well. Only one final push was needed to destroy Issei Hyoudou's life. One night, Issei was walking, breathing heavily, when he reached Ria's room. Without thinking, he broke the doorknob and went inside. Rias woke up and saw Issei like this. Rias. Issei, what's wrong? She said, confused. Rias approached Issei to see what was wrong. Despite her jealousy, the fights, and what happened with Asia and Kuoh, she still hoped Issei would change. Rias touched Issei's forehead, and when she did, Issei grabbed her wrist. Rias. Issei, what the hell is wrong with you? She said, but was thrown onto the bed. Rias. Issei, please stop. She said as she began to walk away from Issei. Issei just lunged at Rias, and well, we all know what happened in Ria's room. To help Issei, Ken put up a barrier so that no one could hear Ria's screams and pleas. That day Issei raped Rias, Akeno, Zenobia, Irina, Asia, Kaneko, Kuroka, Lefay, Ingrid, Benia, Ravelal. He even went to Yasaka Palace and raped her in front of her daughter, who watched in horror what Issei did in front of her. Ken just watched the spectacle while taking pictures to sell to the various supernatural beings who would pay millions to see the most desired women having sex. Finally, Issei reached his room and went to sleep after what he had done. Ken. Good job, brother. It's time to remove this spell. He said while saying a few words, and both Issei and Drag were now free from Ken's spell. Ken left via magic loop to his house, courtesy of Rias, as he said that Issei and they needed privacy. Ken arrived and hid the photos, and not even a second passed before a magic circle appeared and Rias arrived with all the others. They were all crying, but Irina and Gabriel cried the most since they both fell for Issei. Ken. Girls, what happened to you? He said, feigning concern, but was hugged by all of them. Ken simply comforted them and bathed them all. Of course, he knew it wasn't the right time to make them his. Ken cast a spell on them to make them virgins again, but he couldn't return Irina and Gabriel to being pure angels. Ken. That bastard will see when I give him the worst beating of his life, he said as he stood up, but Rias grabbed him and Ken turned around and gave her a passionate kiss. Ken returns the kiss, followed by receiving another from Akeno, Kaneko, Ravel and the others. Rias. Ken, I can't stand it. Issei is no longer the boy I fell in love with. Please take care of me from now on. She said while looking him in the eyes. The others said the same thing and Kuoh asked him to be her Odo-san. Ken. I promise, I won't let anyone hurt them again, he said with a smile, and they hugged him. Later, Issei didn't understand what he had done and felt very guilty. He tried to apologize many times but received magical attacks and several cuts from the girls. Issei tried to give them gifts like bouquets of roses, which were destroyed because the girls hit him with them. Chocolates which Kaneko would just step on in front of him, gifts which were destroyed by magic. Issei tried many ways to fix what he did, but no one listened to him. The worst part was that the factions discovered what he had done, and Michael, Sirzechs, and other faction leaders gave him the worst beating of his life, which almost killed him. They didn't include him in the treaty for all his accomplishments and actions, but they stripped him of his title as a pillar of the alliance and gave it to Ken. He was banned from the factions and strictly forbidden from approaching the girls in Kuoh. Many doors closed on Issei, who began to suffer a great depression because of what he did. There were few people left who still supported Issei, such as Gaspar, who believed what Issei told him and also disliked Ken because he always told him to be more of a man and not a sissy. Kuoh and his group supported him because after his fight in Hyoudou and the subsequent battle where they were defeated, he had earned their respect. They didn't believe what he had done and supported him. Hiba, who also didn't believe what he did since he knew Issei wouldn't do that voluntarily, also disliked Ken after what he did to Issei by taking away his girls. Bali, Ardor, and Biku couldn't believe what he had done, since after living in the Hyoudou mansion for a while, they had gotten to know Issei better and were 100% sure that Issei wouldn't do such a thing. And finally, to everyone's surprise, Razor, who couldn't believe what he had done after Issei helped him overcome his fear of dragons, began a friendship with him. They were both perverts, but Razor knew that Issei couldn't do that willingly. And finally, some boys whom Issei saved along with their partners, and they too didn't believe it since it was impossible that Issei had done that. Issei sank deeper into depression and his hygiene became of little importance to him as sleep was a nightmare for him because it made him remember what he had done and how he had abused each one. The golden apple cider made him forget for a few seconds what he had done, but every time he drank, he had a picture of the girls in his head. Things were different at school, as Ken told everyone what Issei had done and earned the hatred of the entire school. Saji choked him while Ken beat him, but Issei didn't care much about that. In the supernatural realm, things were different as his Op-Eye Dragon program had been cancelled and children no longer saw him as their hero. Many children destroyed their Op-Eye Dragon hats, records, dolls, etc. Many demanded that Issei be sent to Tartarus, but it was denied. In the end, Issei was the most hated person in the school and the supernatural world because of what he did. And his parents, well, they decided to listen to Ken, and that was something that broke Issei because nobody supported him, except for his friends who still supported him. Vindel flashed back. Bragg only saw his friend turn to ashes, and the Ascalon sword fell to the ground. Bragg. Farewell, partner. I promised to clear your name, and I already know who will help me. He said as Issei's familiar, a black crow, emerged, shedding tears upon seeing his master commit suicide. Bragg. Tell everyone who still loved Issei what happened, he said as he disappeared. The relative nods and flies away, shedding tears of sadness. Bragg just went to where the figure of a red dragon could be seen, but it was shed tears of sadness. The family member arrived first with Kiba, who, upon learning what Issei had done, simply knelt down and began to cry while mourning his death. It was next with Gaspar who, upon learning this, shouted his sensei's name while tears of pain and sadness streamed from his eyes. It was with the next person, Razor, who, upon learning what he had done, could only pour himself a drink and raise it in honor of Issei. When Razor finished, he could only shed a few tears, but then his queen arrived and hugged him, while Razor just cried silently as his queen comforted him. It was with the next one, with Kuoh, who upon learning this could only sigh and look at the sky. Kuoh. Your depression was stronger than you, find the right path, he said while looking at the sky and telling his team what Issei did. Jean fell unconscious upon hearing this, and the others simply said that she should rest eternally. Bali, Ardor, and Biku remained silent as they processed the news. Bali. We never knew who was the strongest, he said, looking at the sky. The Op-Eye Dragon had committed suicide because of a selfish person who took everything from him, but karma always does its job sooner or later. 3 months later. Some time had passed and no one knew what happened to Issei Hyoudou. Rias noticed that Kiba was just looking at her with annoyance and anger. He wasn't even speaking to her or saying hello anymore. Gaspar distanced himself from everyone. He started wearing men's clothes and using all kinds of colognes. Many girls wanted to approach him, but he just ignored them as if they were trash. Gaspar became more rebellious, refusing to make any contracts and starting to behave very rudely towards Rias and the others. Razor ordered a mansion to be built in the human world and distanced himself from his entire family, especially Ravel. Razor and his entourage left the Phoenix mansion and went to where they trained day and night for one goal. Revenge. Kuoh was sad because he not only lost a good friend, but also Jean, who couldn't bear the news and committed suicide by attacking herself with her own technique. He and his group found her covered in swords all over her body. Kuoh trained in the same way as Razor, because if Issei was no longer there, then he would now be responsible for protecting humanity and the human world. Bali kicked Kuroka and Lefay out of his team. They didn't understand, but just seeing the furious faces of the three of them was enough to make them leave Bali's team. Now the three of them were training because they needed a pillar. The Op-Eye dragon had died, and it was time for someone else to take that place to protect humanity. Ken was very happy during this time because he had his useless brother's girlfriends, but everything has its consequences. Ken realized that none of the girls wanted to have sex with him because they were still afraid of what happened with Issei, but he wasn't in a hurry. After all, they were already his. It was just a matter of them all deciding to do it with him, and that only required a spell of aphrodisiac, love and lust. Ken was walking towards the new Hyoudou mansion, since the other one had been abandoned because Issei lived there. Ken walked on, unaware that shadows were following him. Ken walked on but didn't notice he was trapped in an illusion field. Ken was walking when he heard the sound of a chainsaw, which caught his attention. Ken walked towards the sound. He wasn't scared because he had powers and ordinary weapons didn't affect him. He arrived at a house that was ajar and went inside where he saw a toy that made chainsaw sounds. Ken. How silly, he said while turning off the toy. Ken went outside, but then he felt something liquid coming out of his ear, and when he looked, he saw that his ear was bleeding. He saw and realized that he had a sniper's bullet wound in his ear. Ken didn't feel it at that moment, but he felt a sharp pain, and when he looked at his reflection, he saw that he had black veins where he had been shot. He was searching for the person responsible when he felt 2 gunshots in his arms. Ken. He screamed a lot because he felt a very strong burning sensation where he was shot. Ken decides to run, but then he hears the chainsaw again. Ken thought it was that stupid toy again, but then he saw something very strange in the shape of a chainsaw chasing him. Why are you running away as soon as the party starts, bitch? Said the chainsaw-shaped being. Ken ran, but then he reached the building and went inside. Ken saw everything and didn't see anyone like this, but then he saw a pool of blood on the floor. Ken. What the hell? He said as he approached but only saw the pool of blood. Wow, you saw my blood, didn't you? Said a guy in armor. When Ken saw him, he tried to launch an attack, but nothing happened. Ken decided to flee, but as he ran, he crashed into the wall and fell to the ground. Ken. What's wrong with me? He said as he tried to stand up but fell to the ground again. Then I heard a loud scream that made me put my hands to my ears as they began to bleed. It's useless, my blood is like liquor too strong for my opponents, anyone who smells it without my permission loses control of their senses, he said as he approached. Ken stepped back and then saw 4 more guys approaching along with the guy in armor and the guy with the chainsaw. A relative told us what you did and you disgust me, said the guy in armor. Men like us don't do that. Girlfriends, ex-girlfriends, mothers, sisters, cousins, aunts, sisters-in-law are respected, and you didn't do that, said a guy with a sniper rifle. I have 100 handcuffs and believe me, what you did is unspeakable, you're a disgrace to a person, she said while letting out another scream that made him scream in pain as his bones broke. You don't deserve to be called brother, what you did was betrayal, and that is punishable by death, said the chainsaw man as he cut off his arm making him scream. If you wanted a harem so badly, you should have earned them instead of stealing them, said a guy with 2 machine guns. We have to teach him like dogs that that's not how things are done, said a muscular guy in a sumo suit. That sounds good to me, said the armored man, summoning a spear. Ken suffered the worst torture of his life. From being cut to pieces by the chainsaw and being healed again to being tortured again. From being violated by the spear of the armored guy. Ken suffered the worst torture imaginable. The guy with machine guns shoved a grenade up his anus. The guy with the sniper rifle made him eat a flare and detonated it in his stomach. The screaming guy let out a powerful scream that made him suffer in his bones. The muscular guy whipped him all over the place without mercy. Ken then woke up and saw that his body was intact, but he felt a lot of pain as he felt all the torture. Ken felt so much pain that even with Asia's healing and Ravel's phoenix tears, he wasn't healed since he had nothing wrong with him but felt all the torture. Later, all the factions were summoned and they all went to the underworld and saw each other. Searches. Well, who called this urgent meeting? He said while looking at himself. Sarafel. You didn't do it, she said, looking at him. Azazel. That's strange. If you two didn't organize the meeting, then who did? He said while looking at them. I made it, said a guy entering the place. Everyone saw a man with glasses, an elegant black suit and a fit body. Everyone. Roberto Rocci, they said speechlessly. Roberto. I think this is the first time we've met, not factions, wait, we already met when we faced 666, right? He said as they remembered. Michael. That's right, and why did you gather us in the underworld? It's to join the Great Alliance. he said excitedly, because if Roberto joined, no one could destroy the Great Alliance. Roberto? No, he said, colder than her own heart. Everyone was confused. If he had gathered them together to tell them he wasn't going to join, then what was the point? Roberto? Many will ask why I've gathered you all here. Well, it's simple, you can come in. He said as Kiba, Gasper, Razor, Kuoh, Volley, Ardor and Biku and their little bags entered. They all sensed a great power within each other, but the veterans realized that none of them were demons, and Kuoh was no longer human. Roberto? You guys come in too, he said as some boys entered the room. Pen recognized them all, except for one black-haired boy and another brown-haired boy with curly hair. Roberto? And finally, you can come in, Drag. He said as everyone was surprised and others were annoyed because they thought Issei had been called to this meeting. Just then, Aridit enters, walking elegantly towards them, surprising everyone except Roberto and his guests. Auden. You are the Red Emperor, he said, still in disbelief at seeing such beauty. Leo? You'll say I'm Drag, my real name is Mio, I was freed by Roberto, and it's time to start this meeting, she said while looking at Ken furiously. She wanted to kill him right now, but she had to make him confess everything, and then she would kill him. Roberto? Well, you might be wondering why the meeting. Well, let's just say a little bird told me something important. He said while they listened attentively. Roberto? You know, betrayal is something that makes us Aztec sick. Betraying someone is one thing, but betraying a family member is another. You know that betrayal is always paid for with death, right? He said while they just listened and nodded. Roberto? You know there's a miserable dog here who took everything from a good friend of mine, and you factions know that if you mess with my wives, children, or friends, you mess with me, right? He said as he approached Ken, who slammed him onto the table, surprising everyone. Ken? Hey, let go of me please, you're hurting me, he said, complaining. Leo? Roberto is right, you're hurting him, she said while taking a pen that was on the table and sticking it in his ear. Ken? Ai, he screamed in pain as he felt blood coming out of his ear. The girls tried to stop him, but the boys stopped them. Rias? Kiba, Gasper, stop this. She said worriedly. Kiba? Wait and you'll know everything, he said with a serious expression. Roberto? Well Ken Hyoudou, why don't you confess what you did abroad, more specifically in the United States? He said seriously. Ken? I have no idea what you're talking about, he said as Roberto sat him down, and Volley made a cut on his shoulder, making a 5 centimeters cut almost reaching his heart. Volley? Confess already, if you do I promise I won't break all your bones, she said while Ken didn't know whether to answer or not. Ken summoned a sleep gas, but Roberto absorbed the gas and it destroyed him. Roberto? Great children's spell, you tried to put us to sleep, didn't you? Well, I can help you with that. He said, summoning a sword and mercilessly cutting off both of his arms. Roberto regenerates his arms where Ken felt his arms were still cut off, but he still doesn't confess. Auden. I don't understand anything, he said, confused. Roberto? You're screwed now, you know you have no way out. If you confess everything, you can surely save yourself from all of us. I'll make you a deal. If you confess everything, I promise we'll leave you alone. He said, sure of his words. Ken already knew he had no way out. He couldn't use a magic circle because Roberto would block his power. But knowing he would escape unscathed, Roberto gave an arrogant smile and confessed. Ken? Okay, I'll start where you want me to. He said as he began his confession. Leo? Why don't you start when you were in the United States? She said as Ken began his confession. Ken? When I was in the United States, I scammed many students from middle school, high school and university by telling them I was a millionaire and would give them a portion of my fortune if they helped me return to Japan. I made a lot of money, a total of $100,000. I had to escape from the United States because, in addition to fraud, I raped 60 women from middle school, high school and university, he said while everyone didn't believe him. Everyone couldn't process what he said. No words came out of his mouth, but Roberto kept going. Roberto? Okay, now confess what you did to Issei Hyoudou and what you did, he said while Ken was nervous because the girl's eyes were on him. Rias and the others felt a pang in their hearts, and Rias didn't know why she was crying. Zenobi instinctively summons X Durandal, and Kaneko, Kuroka, Yasaka, and Kunu feel a thirst for blood, but they don't understand it. Ken? When I returned from the United States, I was impressed by Issei and all his achievements. My envy grew a lot since I didn't believe that loser could have such beautiful things, so I decided to make a plan to take everything from him. He said seriously. Ken? I decided to learn magic and spells to become strong and begin my plan. What I told you about Issei was mostly a lie, and the photos of the naked girls were fake. It only took a little magic to alter the photos in Issei's essence. His jealousy was my fault since I cast a spell on him to make him feel uncontrollable jealousy. The jealousy was against his will when he hit Asia and Kuoh, and that's all. He said well the girls didn't believe what Ken had done. Now they all understood what he did, why Issei acted that way, and why his jealousy was senseless. Leo. Confess what you did that night, but without going into details, she said very seriously. Ken. To get Issei out of my way and make all his girls mine, I cast a mating spell on him, using extreme lust and a lot of aphrodisiacs. He resisted a lot, but he couldn't overcome the spell, and he raped all the girls in his harem against their will. I recorded and took pictures of the girls being raped by Issei. It was very easy to hide my presence, and I sold all the photos to many fallen angels, demons, and other races, earning millions. Finally, I was responsible for ruining Issei Hyoudou's entire reputation, both at school and throughout Kuoh and the supernatural world, by telling everyone what he did. He finished his confession. No one knew how to respond. Asia, upon hearing Ken's confession and what Issei had done against his will, couldn't believe it. She still remembers how he threw flowers, gifts, and tokens of apology at her. Asia couldn't bear the news and fell unconscious. Irina couldn't believe what that bastard had done. Issei raped her against her will. She hated Issei so much because she had become a wreck. She still remembered how he had stabbed her thigh with a spear, how she had burned his sweets, how she had hit him with her flowers, and how she had told him how much she hated him for what he had done to her. But now that she knew the truth, his jealousy, the grape, now made sense. So she touched her head, denying what she had heard, and fell unconscious with a flood of tears. Ken. Well, now that I've confessed everything, I scream of pain as Kaneko approached him at great speed and punched him in the stomach. Kaneko. You bastard, you bastard, you bastard, she screamed while hitting him in the stomach again and again until his bones could be heard breaking. Gasper holds her while she struggles to get him off, but in the end she cries like never before and hugs Gasper. Roberto. Before I take that bastard, I want to tell you that someone very important died a long time ago, he said while Mio summoned Ascalon and placed her on the table. The girls, seeing the sword, felt another pang in their hearts, and Mio said. Mio. Issei Hyoudou is no longer with us, he committed suicide, she said while shedding tears, since she witnessed him commit suicide and did nothing to stop him on Issei's orders. Akeno now had a lifeless, emotionless look. Akeno thought about going to Issei and asking for his forgiveness, even if it meant being raped by him for days. She would endure it. But when she learned that he had committed suicide, it was too much for her, and she fell to her knees as tears streamed from her eyes. Ross couldn't bear the news and fell unconscious as a sea of tears streamed down his face. Mio summoned a magic circle, and everyone saw how Issei committed suicide, where everyone saw that he died in a slow and painful way. Hiroka and Kaneko watched Issei die, and upon seeing that, they felt great guilt and shame. No one was there to cut off his head and end his suffering. They both just fell to their knees, their eyes losing their shine and tears streaming down their faces. Upon seeing Issei die, Kuoh could only scream. Kuoh. Odo-san pape aye, she screamed while crying non-stop. Roberto. My job is done, guys take this trash away, but before I go, everyone already knows what he did since this meeting is live, so everyone knows what this bastard did, he said as the blue-haired and brown-haired guys took him away. So they put him in a cage and drive motorcycles slowly through the underworld while children and adults throw rotten food or stones at him. Boy. Get out of here, murderer. He said while throwing a rock at him. Girl. Die you wretch, she said while throwing rotten food at him. Girl. Bring back our hero. She said while throwing stones at him. So the children and adults shouted at Ken while throwing things at him, and he traveled all over Gremory territory. Roberto. I'm finished, Kiba and Gasper, return your pieces, he said as they both placed their chess pieces on the table. And so they left, leaving everyone speechless. Ken was taken to prison level 8 where he suffered the worst torture for what he did. Ken suffered day and night. He had no rest from his suffering. Roberto and the others arrived in Arachi's territory, and they began. Leo. Thank you for helping me, Roberto, she said with a smile. Roberto. It was nothing, I remind you that Issei was a good friend of mine, it's a shame he won't be with us, he said while remembering. Flashback. Brag's gem was seen arriving in Aztec territory. He arrived at a house where a black-haired man was making dinner for his family. Then he sensed a presence, and when he looked out the window, he saw a green gem. The black-haired man opened the door and saw Drag, who said nothing. From what I can see, it's something important, right Drag? He said while Drag just nodded. Some time later. Drag. And that's what happened. Arachi Issei committed suicide because of that bastard. He said while Roberto was very serious. Roberto. So, because of his brother Issei, he committed suicide. That's considered betrayal. I can't believe someone like him would take his own life. He said seriously as he stood up. Roberto throws something at Drag's gem, where the gem glowed for a few moments, and a red-haired girl with medium breasts and eyes of different colors emerged. "Leo. How did you know I was a woman?" she said while looking at him. Roberto. "You know I've lived for thousands of years, right? I knew you were a woman, so tell me, did you feel something for Issei, or am I wrong?" He said as she began to cry while Roberto approached her and hugged her, where she began to cry in Roberto's arms. "Leo. It was hard, I should have told him I was a woman, but I couldn't, why did this have to happen, tell me," she said while crying while Roberto didn't know the answer. Roberto. "I promise we will clear her name, so that she will not be remembered like that," he said while Mio just cried in Roberto's arms and finally fell asleep. Roberto took her to a room and thought of a plan. 3 months passed, during which Mio and Roberto already had their plan. That's how everything we saw happened. Vindel flashback. Roberto. "And thank you for your help, Futuro, Tadano, Naoto, Shido, Ryota and Rentaru, for helping me with my plan," he said while giving them a smile. Futuro. "It was a favor we owe to say. He saved me without asking for anything in return during the Great War," he said with a smile. Tadano. "Me too," he said with a smile. Ryota. "We're going to miss him a lot," he said while smiling and looking at the ceiling. Roberto. "Well, now we just have to see how the world will take this," he said as he walked towards his office and took everyone home, while Mio went to the patio to see Roberto's garden. "Leo. My friend, I have cleared your name and your legacy. I will go with you," he said while summoning Ascalon, and without thinking, he buried it in his stomach. Mine just fell as he felt his life slipping away. Before she died, she saw Issei taking her hand, giving her a smile, and then they both left. Leo's body tore to pieces like Issei's, and she disappeared, ending her life. Roberto. "Rest in peace Issei and Mio," he said as Tadano, Shido, Naoto, Ryota, Futuro, Rentaro, Volley, Ardor, Biku, Kiba, Gasper, Razor and Cao came out with shotguns and fired into the air. Both fire their weapons, signaling that someone else has died in this life. The Aztecs nearby hear the synchronized shots and look only at the sky in respect. Some time later. Everyone's life changed when the truth came to light. Many children cried upon learning the truth. They had gone to the garbage dumps to retrieve their belongings from the Oppi Dragon. Razor gave the television station the Oppi Dragon program with all the episodes, and an exclusive channel was created where they broadcast the series 24 hours a day along with the songs. Oppi Dragon merchandise returned to sale, along with various souvenirs, with many people buying items to remember their hero. Various cities, including those in the underworld, heaven and elsewhere, held ceremonies for Issei, whom everyone will remember forever. In the human world, everyone felt a great guilt upon learning the truth. At his school, an altar was set up with Issei's picture and various flowers, where many people left them in his honor. His desk was repaired and cared for by everyone, with everyone cleaning his place to remember Issei. His locker was the same, where several people left him gifts to apologize for how they treated him when Ken accused him of rape. Murayama and Caddis felt immense guilt because they too had spread the news that he was a rapist. When they saw the truth, a great guilt overwhelmed them, and day and night they remembered how they had treated him. The boys booed them for being liars and murderers because many said that Ken and they were to blame. As always, people look for someone to blame to feel less guilty. It was so bad that they both committed suicide by jumping off a bridge where they both died, but before dying they saw Issei giving them a smile where they both died peacefully. Aika no longer spoke to anyone, not even Mitsuda and Motohama, who felt enormous guilt for not helping their best friend when he needed them most. They both dropped out of Kuoh school and went to Korea to continue their studies. Aika noticed that Issei's locker, like his desk, had been arranged like this, and she simply left without saying anything. Aika. Hypocrites, she said as she left. So she also dropped out and went to Tokyo to continue her studies. And what happened to the girls? Upon hearing that, all of them could only cry, and some even denied that Issei had died. Asia suffered a mental breakdown where she denied that Issei had died, and it was so severe that she woke up every day searching for Issei, even posting missing photos of him. Asia searched for him every day. She even went days without eating and would return at night, where she would cry and beg God for Issei to come back. The girls tried to tell her that Issei had died, but she just denied it, saying it was a lie, that he was still alive. But one day she was found dead in her room, having taken her own life by drinking holy water, where she died slowly and in great pain. On her nightstand they found a letter that said, "If Issei-sen doesn't return, I'll go with him." Thus Asia died because she could not bear the idea that Issei had died. The same thing happened with Irina, but it was different. She cried in her room every day, remembering what she had done. It got to the point where his mind began to imagine that Issei was still alive, that Michael had sent him on a mission, and that he would return at any moment. Michael gave her a doll under the pretext that it was a gift from Issei, and she cherished it, kissing it and placing it on her breasts. So she started making little clothes, a mini uniform for her doll, and she began to imagine that it was Issei, and she talked to him and cuddled him. Her sanity had been lost, and she imagined that the doll was Issei, so much so that she spent day and night in her room taking care of Issei. But hunger, thirst, and poor hygiene took their toll, and she died from lack of food, water, and hygiene. That's how she died, but hugging Issei's doll. Zenobia had it worse, since they had to take Exterandal away from her, because when she learned that Issei had committed suicide, she tried to take her own life many times but couldn't. Zenobia suffered day and night from nightmares about how he cut Issei with Exterandal, how he destroyed his gifts, or how he sent Ken and Saji to beat him up. Her mind tormented her day and night, but she suffered worse when Asia committed suicide and Irina died of starvation. Zenobia desperately wanted to commit suicide until she found Father Fred's gun in Issei's room. Zenobia touched the weapon and it only said, "Zenobia. Wait, girls, Issei, I'll come with you," she said, and a gunshot was heard in the house. Zenobia had committed suicide by shooting herself in the head, where she died instantly. The same thing happened with Ravel as with Irina. She locked herself in her room and didn't come out at all. But the difference with Irina is that she had bought every possible item from the Op-Eye Dragon collection. She spent her time hugging an Op-Eye Dragon plushie while watching the Op-Eye Dragon channel over and over again. It didn't matter if the episode was repeated, she just watched the show where she saw Issei acting. One day the remaining girls entered Ravel's room where they saw her smiling, watching the program. "Ravel. Come in, girls, Issei will be here any minute," she said with a smile as they went in to make Ravel happy, ignoring the smell, and watched the show with her. At the end of the show, they saw Ravel with his eyes closed and a smile on his face. Ravel had died from dehydration and lack of food, as she only watched the program while hugging the stuffed animal. Kaneko no longer ate anything sweet, she just stared at the night sky while tears streamed down her face. During those days she would lock herself in her room while looking at photos of herself with Issei. I looked at them again and again without rest. She ate savory things, she no longer ate any sweets until one day, while looking for something of Issei's in his room, a box fell and opened. She was startled because she thought it was something made of glass that belonged to Issei, but she saw that it was a box of sweets containing her favorite candies. She saw a note that said, "For my beautiful kitten." She knew instantly that Issei planned to give her that, so she cried like she never had before while hugging the box. She took the box to her room and happily ate the sweets that Issei had planned to give her. Kaneko had a smile on her face, but she put a strange liquid on the sweets she was eating with a smile. "Kaneko. Issei-senpai, here I come," she said while eating all the sweets. Kaneko decided to sleep where the girls were. When they entered her room, they saw her asleep, but upon realizing what was happening, they saw that Kaneko had committed suicide by poisoning herself. Things haven't gone well for Kuroka. First she lost Issei, then she lost her team, and now she's lost Shirin. She was devastated and tried many times to go to the Leavenate prison, but was denied because it was Aztec territory. She wanted to go and torture Ken, but what she did was that wretch took everything from her, and all she wanted was to torture him, but she was denied. She went to a seedy bar and drank until she couldn't walk properly. She had one bottle while drinking another. She arrived very drunk at the park where Issei had been reincarnated. She just sat by the fountain and drank 2 bottles of alcohol and another of a different substance. She saw Issei and when she saw him she ran, but as she ran she fell and saw him approaching her. She felt a warmth in his hand and she jumped into his arms and covered him with kisses and made him promise that he would never leave her. He nodded and carried Kuroka in his arms. Kuroka was found dead in the park with a bottle of alcohol and another of lethal poison. The alcohol was added to make it more effective. Things didn't go well for the 100-yen Valkyrie with Ross. When she learned what Issei did and all of Ken's lies, she fell. She would go to seedy bars where she drank every night and return to the mansion very drunk. This was their life these days. Money wasn't a problem since they were rich and they could drink without worrying about alcohol or money. She spent every day like that. Nobody could do anything for her since she wouldn't let any man near her, well, except for the bartender. "Ross. Bartender, another drink, the strongest one," he said as he took another sip. "Ross. Hahaha, another one," he said while raising his jar. "Bartender. Miss, you should stop. Your family must be very worried about you," he said while looking at her. "Ross. SHHH, you're nobody to tell me how to drink or not, idiot," he said while the other just became serious. "Bartender. I'm serious, tell me what your husband would say if he saw you like this," he said while she just stared at him with a cold dark look. "Ross. Bartender, can I have a hiccup honest conversation with you?" he said as the bartender replied. "Bartender. Of course you want to vent your troubles, right? he said as she nodded. Ross. You know, I loved someone very important to me, hiccup, but one day a bastard came along and cheated on me, hiccup, he cheated on me, he said while looking at him. Ross. He did something that caused the love of my life to grape me against my will and his own. I left him and my beloved, she said as she began to cry. Ross. He committed suicide. When I found out the truth, I was like this. Alcohol helps me forget my damn mistake. I just want to see him and tell him I'm sorry for being so stupid, you know. She said while the bartender just listened to her. Bartender. You really want to meet with him? He said as she nodded tearfully. Bartender. Well, you can drink the drink of death, he said while looking at her. Ross. What a hip original name, and what is it? He said while looking at it. Bartender. Do you know why the bar is called Suicide? Many come here to commit suicide because of debt, depression, or because they feel something unique in their lives, or, as in your case, because of betrayal by their loved one. He said while she was interested. Ross. And what about their bodies? He said while he was speaking. Bartender. I'll tell you the truth, we sell their organs on the black market, we keep their belongings, and in cases like women like you, we have hex with their bodies and sell their organs. He said seriously. Ross. Go ahead, my life has no meaning, I just want to see Issei again, she said as he gave her a paper where she allowed him to do whatever he wanted with her body. Ross signed and the bartender gave him a very fine drink, but the last one for anyone. So Ross didn't think twice and drank his last sip as she slowly lost her senses and life. The bartender just pats his head and says. Bartender, go to your beloved miss. He said as she saw Issei and ran into his arms and hugged him with all her might. Issei took her away while she hugged him. In the bar, Ross's dead body was visible and the bartender was having hex with it. The girls never found Ross, so they presumed her dead since no one bothered to look for her. Things were bad with Ingrid. She went to the territory of the dragons where she went to a place where she sang every night to attract Issei. Ingrid refused to believe that Issei had committed suicide. She said it was a lie that he was in the dragon's territory. Ingrid sang harmoniously, attracting many dragons to hear her voice. She sang all night without asking for anything. During the day, Ingrid searched for him tirelessly and at night she sang to lure Issei, who had died. The dragon saw her like that and could feel nothing but pity for her, so he gave her poison to end her suffering. He gave Ingrid poison under the pretext that it would improve her voice, so she didn't think twice and drank it. On her last night, Ingrid sang a song that made some dragons feel sad, while others, who didn't understand, followed the rhythm. Ingrid sang like never before, but while she was singing she saw Issei's figure approaching her. Ingrid improved her voice as she touched Issei's hands, and they both danced. When they finished, Ingrid gave Issei a passionate kiss and she cried on his shoulder. Issei picked her up like a princess and carried her away. The dragons raised their gaze and approached Ingrid, realizing that she had died. The dragon who gave her the poison was Tannen, who no longer wanted to see Ingrid suffer because of her former friend. Things weren't pretty with Office. She lost her emotions again. She was an empty shell without feelings. She only remembered the beatings he gave her when he tried to get close to her. His guilt was so great that he went to Aztec territory and asked Roberto for a favor. Office. Kill me, she said on her knees, her voice devoid of emotion. Roberto. Are you sure? He said while looking at her. Office. Keep my power if you want, I just want to be with Issei and apologize to him. If that means being his hex slave, I'll do it. She said emotionlessly. Roberto saw Office as his younger sister, just like Gran Rojo DXD, so Roberto summoned Ascalon and, to ensure her death, bathed the sword in Samuel's poison and buried it in her stomach. Office felt her life slipping away as her body tore to pieces. Office saw Issei holding her hand and they both left the place. Roberto only saw Office's body being torn to pieces. The ball of energy entered Roberto, where he felt very strong. Things didn't go well for them with Sona. Sona cried in her room every day, staring at a chessboard. She still remembers how, because of her overconfidence, Issei won her hand by beating her at chess. She still remembers how he wouldn't force her to marry him and how he defended her at the youth meeting when she shared her dream. Sona was devastated. She just wanted to die and see Issei again. Sona, while walking through the Hyoudou house, accidentally entered Irina's room. No one entered her room after finding her dead. She entered thinking it was Issei's room and found Irina's sword. Sona had that sword and realized it was holy and would kill her. Sona. I'll see you again, Issei-kun, she said with a smile as she cut her own throat. Sona fell to the ground while losing a large amount of blood. Before falling dead, Sona saw Issei lifting her up and they both left. Sona asked him to carry her, which Issei did, and they both left. Sona was found dead in Irina's room with her throat cut. Things didn't go well for him with Sarafel. She had resigned from her position as Leviathan. She spent her time in her room crying while watching the Op-Eye Dragon program. He was devastated when he learned that Sona had committed suicide. She had wanted to leave this world to reunite with Issei and, if possible, with Sona. Sarafel saw a knife in her room and remembered that it was a holy knife courtesy of Michael to reinforce the alliance. "Sarafel. I'll see you again," she said, and without thinking twice she plunged the knife into her stomach where she suffered a slow and painful death. Before she died, she saw Issei and Sona lifting her up and Sarafel cried like a child while hugging Issei and Sona. She showered them both with kisses and the three of them left the place. Sarafel was found dead in her room with a holy knife in her stomach. Things weren't pretty for her with Yasaka. To begin with, she had to be strong for her daughter, but Kuoh was devastated and sad. She just spent all her time watching the Op-Eye Dragon program without ever going out. Yasaka tried to help Kuoh out of her depression, but it was impossible. One day, Yasaka, like every other day, woke Kuoh up, but her room was locked and sealed with a yokai seal. Yasaka feared the worst, broke down the door, and found Kuoh dead with a jar. She cried non-stop, but then she saw a letter that said, "Don't be sad, Oka-san, I'm just going with Odo-san." She was devastated. She had lost not only Issei but also Kuoh, so she made a decision. She also decided to take her own life by poisoning herself. Life had no meaning for her without Kuoh and Issei. Thus she drank the same poison that her daughter drank, and before dying she saw Issei and Kuoh approach her. Yasaka hugged them both, and the three of them left the place. Yasaka and Kuoh had died from sadness and depression. Things didn't go well for him with Lefay. To begin with, she returned to her castle in England where she spent her time in her room crying. Her brother no longer spoke to her, and things were worse because she was the one responsible for Ken learning to use magic. She smashed everything in her room that was related to magic. "Lefay. I'm a damn fool," she said as she threw her broken broom at the wall. The broom fell onto a shelf where a book fell, and seeing it, he alone picks it up and leaves the mansion with the book and his wand. She searched through pages and found an invocation spell. She began the spell, where a magic circle appeared, and when it ended, tentacles grabbed her. "Lefay. I hope that my death can forgive this," he said while shedding tears and smiling. The tentacles began to tear apart Lefay's body, destroying arms, legs, thighs, everything. Upon seeing the scene, her parents destroyed the spell and saw their daughter torn to pieces and dead. Lefay suffered the worst death of all to pay for his sin of helping Ken master magic. Things were too bad for Akeno. To begin with, his eyes lost all their sparkle. He was a living dead man. She began cutting herself in various parts of her body, torturing herself for what she had done. It got so bad that they had to lock her in her room. She could only think about Issei and how cruel he had been to him. Her life had no meaning without him, so she decided to make a decision. She summoned her 5 pairs of wings and, with a knife she had hidden, slowly and painfully cut them all off. It was torture, but she felt she had to pay for what she did to Issei. She removed them one by one until the place was covered in blood and she was slowly dying from lack of blood. "Before I die I'm going to Issei," and without thinking she ran into his arms and hugged him like a sea of tears. Akeno promised him that she would be his slave, his servant, his toy, his everything if in return he forgave her for what she did. Issei kissed her and carried her like a princess, and they both left. In her room it was a disturbing scene, as the person who found Akeno was traumatized by seeing a sea of blood and many feathers in the place. Gabriel decided to become strong to protect humanity and the supernatural, just as Issei and his daughter Akeno once did. Finally with Rias. She suffered the worst of it, not only because she had seen each of her harem sisters die, but also because of the great guilt she carried, blaming herself for Issei's suicide. Rias spent most of her time in her room watching the Op-Eye Dragon show and would go out to see the fountain where Issei reincarnated. Rias remembered how Issei reincarnated, how they shared their first kiss, their first date, how she felt when everything died. Rias couldn't bear the sadness. She saw Asia being taken away after she drank the holy water, how Irina was dragged from her room, where it was impossible to take that plushie from her, how Zenobia was taken out with a gunshot wound to the head, how Ravel died beside them, how Kaneko was dragged from her room dead, how Kuroka was found dead in this park. It was the reason why almost no one came here anymore, because they said the ghost who died here was still there. How Office was murdered by Roberto, how Ingrid committed suicide in the same way, Ross's disappearance, she tried to find her with her chess piece, but never found either her or her piece, how Yasaka and Kuoh had died, how Sarafel and Sona committed suicide with holy weapons, how Lefay was torn apart by a spell she cast herself, and to her greatest sorrow, how Akeno committed suicide in a slow and painful way. Benia, Ulmenhold, Gabriel, and Penemu were still there, but their families took them away after learning that Issei had died. No one knew what happened to them, but many said they both committed suicide, something many already believed, including Rias. Rias decided to make a decision. To jump into bed to meet everyone. She went to the church in Kuoh to have the most painful and hellish death of all. She arrived at the church and without thinking, she looked for something in the church and found it. She took off her clothes and without thinking began to bathe with a large amount of holy water. Rias felt like she was bathing in acid. She felt her skin, organs, and eyes burning. In the end, Rias was on the verge of death, but before she died, she saw darkness as her eyes burned. She saw Issei and all her harem sisters, including Benia, Ulmenhold, Gabriel, and Penemu, who smiled at her, as did the others. Issei approached her, and without thinking, she jumped into his arms and kissed him all over until she apologized again and again. Issei just kept saying it was okay, but she cried like a child. Issei carried her away like a princess and even began to calm her down like a child. All of Issei's girls had committed suicide. Things in the world didn't change. 20 years passed during which Issei's friends had their children, but everything changed. A race of superhumans had been born and there was no way to stop them. One type could not die from magical attacks because they regenerated, another could not die from swords or common weapons, and finally, they could only die if touched by sunlight and a material that absorbs sunlight. The superhumans were commanded by Muzan Kibutsuji, who wanted to dominate everything as Reservoir 666 once did. Things didn't end well for the friends. To begin with, not only was Muzan the strongest, but he also had 12 very powerful demons called demonic moons. So inferior that they were the 6 strongest, but below the superior ones. And then there were the superior ones, the 6 strongest of all, and then came Muzan. Humans called them demons, and they earned that title as demons. The first to die was Rentaro and his 100 brides, along with his children from Upper Moon 6, who were 3 demons named Gyutaro, Daki and Kagaku. Next was Razor, his entourage and his children, who died at the hands of Upper Moon 4 Hantengu and his clones. They did not know their weakness and they died. Next was Kiba, who died at the hands of Upper Moon 1 Kakishibo, who didn't give him time to breathe and killed him. Next was Kuoh, who was killed by Upper Moon 5, who trapped him in a vessel of water, and he drowned. Next was Vali, who died from the Upper Moon. 3 Akaza pierced him like a donut and died. Next were Ardor and Biku, who died from the Upper Moon 2 Dauma, who froze them and died. Only Futaro, Naoto, Ryota, Gaspar, Tadano, and Shido remained, who with great effort defeated the 6 lower moons. Roberto knew that if Muzan was killed, all the demons would die, but he always had a plan B. Gaspar froze time, which they used to their advantage, killing the 3 upper moons. Gaspar was unable to freeze Akaza due to his determination, and Gaspar was killed by him. The others were also killed by the remaining 3 moons and Muzan. Roberto was badly injured by Muzan's attacks. Roberto was missing an arm and an eye and barely had the other arm left. Muzan. Last words, he said while holding a large meat whip to kill Roberto. Roberto. You know, if Issei had been here, he would have kicked your ass, but I won't be the one responsible for killing you, he will. He said while having an attack on his arm. Kakishibo lunged to cut off his other arm, but Roberto made his move first. Roberto. Regression's infernus, he said as the whole place glowed. Roberto. Thinking, it's your turn, girls, to thwart Ken's plans and prevent Issei from committing suicide again. Issei, you will be everyone's hope once more and you will be able to defeat this monster. He said as everything turned white. 20 years ago, the day Ken came into everyone's lives. The lovely birdsong could be heard in the trees and the sun illuminated the town of Kuoh. Iridide was slowly waking up. When she woke up, she saw that she had tears in her eyes. She was confused, but then all her memories came flooding back and she remembered everything, even how Issei committed suicide. She looked at the bed and saw that little by little all her harem sisters were waking up. They too wake up and remember everything. They looked at each other and their first action was to cry while hugging each other. Rias. Akeno, she said while hugging her best friend while crying a lot. Akeno. Rias, she said in the same way. They were all hugging each other and saw that Issei wasn't there. Asia. Issei-san, where is he? She said worriedly, thinking the worst. The office. Look girls, she said while showing them her phone. They all saw and realized that it was the day they would meet Ken. Yasaka. If this is the day, it means, she said, unable to believe it. All. We have a second chance, they said, surprised. Rias quickly grabbed her phone and looked for Issei's number, found it, and called it immediately. Every second that passed felt like an eternity to Rias until she heard the voice she had longed to hear. Issei. Hello Rias, what's wrong? He said into the phone. Rias. Issei, we need you, please come, she said with a broken and sad voice. Issei. Are you all alright? He said, sounding worried as it was the first time he'd heard Rias like this. Rias. Please come home, she said as Rias crying could be heard. Issei was worried, he didn't care if he left school like this, he grabbed his briefcase, changed his shoes and ran at top speed to his house. He arrived in 1 minute, running as fast as he could. He went inside where his parents asked him what happened, but he didn't answer. He arrived and upon entering saw all his girls looking somewhat depressed. Issei. "Girls, what happened to you?" he said, but was thrown to the ground by his entire harem who hugged him with all their might, refusing to let go. Issei didn't know what to do, but this wasn't about him, it was about making his girls feel better. Issei hugged them, and Rias gave him a desperate and clumsy kiss. Issei was confused but responded. He could feel Ria's sadness and desperation as she kissed him. But it didn't end there, as they all gave him a kiss like Rias, which he reciprocated, giving them all his attention. Issei. "Don't worry girls, I'm here," he said, but felt a hug from behind him, seeing Kuoh with a sea of tears, begging for forgiveness. Issei. "Calm down," he said while calming her down like a child. Kuoh and the others wouldn't let him, and he had to calm everyone down, even Office. Issei. Thinking, drag que les pasa a todas, thinking confused. Brag. "I have no idea, mate. It was the speed boosts you gave me that woke me up," he thought to himself. Issei hugged everyone where he spent the whole day calming them down. None of them wanted to let go of him, and they stayed like that until nightfall. Issei. "Girls, we need to go downstairs for dinner. You should eat something," he said as they nodded. So everyone got off, and Mickey and Goro could be seen talking to Ken. Mickey. "Hello son, look who's here," she said as Issei recognized her and the girls held Issei tighter. Issei. "Ken, it's been so long," he said as he tried to approach, but Zenobia and Irina stopped him. Zenobia. "Issei, how about you make your famous dinners that you know how to make?" she said while Issei thought about it and agreed. So they all let go of Issei, and he greeted Ken, and Issei went to the kitchen to cook. Ken felt nervous because they were all looking at him with a murderous aura. They all, without exception, wanted to kill him right there, especially Rias, Akeno, and Kuroka. So Issei told them that dinner was ready, and they saw a grand banquet. They were all drooling at the sight of such a delicacy and rushed to eat. Issei and his parents sat down, as did Ken, but when he tried to get some food, the girls took it first. Ken. "Aya," scream of pain as he felt a bowl of hot soup in his crotch. Ken went to the bathroom quickly, and Kuoh was responsible for that, doing it by accident. Rias. "Issei, say ah," she said while holding a piece of meat. Issei didn't think twice and opened the door, where Rias took advantage of that and gave him a kiss with tongue, which made Issei blush and reciprocate. In the end, Issei won the battle, leaving Rias blushing, and she gave him the piece of meat. They all did the same and all enjoyed Issei's delicacy without leaving any for Ken, since he didn't deserve it. So Issei was in the bathroom where Asia and Gabriel were washing his back and Rias was washing his hair. Issei. "You know I can bathe alone, girls," he said blushing as he felt Gabriel's breasts against his back. Rias. "We're going to make sure you're nice and clean," she said while they all bathed Issei, who came out very clean, as did the others. Issei was telling a story to Kuoh, who was asleep with a smile. Kuoh. "I love you, daddy," she said sleepily with a smile. Issei. "Me too, Kuoh," he said while giving her a kiss on the forehead. Issei arrived at his room, and a scent of coconut and strawberries reached his nose as he saw all his girls waiting for him. Rias. "Come on Issei, we'll give you the main space," she said as Issei lay down in the middle and they all hugged him, refusing to let go. Issei. "I love them," he said as he fell into the dream world. All. "Us too," they said at the same time. Issei fell asleep and Rias, to make sure he wouldn't wake up for a while, cast a sleep spell on him. Rias. "We went back to the past, I still can't believe it," she said while holding Issei to her breasts. Akeno. "Me neither, I remember that we all committed suicide, except for Benia-chan, Elmenhold-chan, Gabriel and Penemu, what happened to you?" she said looking at them. Benia. "My father locked me in a room where I only received food. When Issei committed suicide, I couldn't and I tried to commit suicide, but I couldn't until, taking advantage of my father's carelessness, I took my scythe and cut off my own head," she said while remembering how she took her own life. Elmenhold. "My sadness and desperation to die that time made me drink a poison that destroyed all my organs, and I died," she said seriously while hugging Issei's leg. Gabriel. "Michael locked me in a room, but unable to bear the thought of Issei dying, I strangled myself with a special rope, and so I died," she said while hugging Issei's other leg. Penemu. "Azazel imprisoned me just like Gabriel did, and so I stabbed myself in the neck with a spear and died a slow and painful death," she said while hugging Issei's arm. Rias. "Now I understand. And you, Ross, how did you die since you never appeared?" she said while Ross recounted how that bartender gave him that death drink and he died, and the reason why they never found him. That way they all understand, and before they die. "I see you all remember everything," said a guy through the window. Everyone saw him and recognized him as Roberto, but he had a blindfold over his eyes. Sarafel. Roberto-sama, why do you have a blindfold on your eyes? She said while confused. Roberto. Do you want my wives to kill me for looking at other girls naked without their permission? He said while trembling slightly. They all put on their pajamas and now they could talk comfortably with Roberto. Rias. You can take off the blindfold now, she said as Roberto took it off and saw them in their pajamas. Roberto. Well, the reason they remember everything is because I sent them back to the past, he said seriously. They are all surprised and say. Rias. And why? We caused Issei to commit suicide. She said while looking at him. Roberto. Yes, but you didn't know about Ken's plan. Now you have a chance to fix this mistake. Besides, Issei is humanity's hope and a supernatural hope for what's to come. He said seriously. Sona. What does that mean? She said, confused. So Roberto explained to them what happened 20 years after they committed suicide and they all understood. Roberto. My plan to fight Musin and his moons is this. You will train just like Issei, but first we have to get Ken out of the way. That's why I'll hold a meeting in 3 months. During that time, find evidence of what Ken did in the United States and also plant false, manipulated evidence against him. That way we'll get that bastard out of the way. He said seriously. So they all agree to Roberto's plan and he says. Roberto. With that said, I'm leaving. I have to build a factory to make the weapons that will kill those demons, Musin. He said as he left. They all knew what to do now that they were back in the past and could do things right. Chapter 2. Unmasking the Traitor. A month had already passed and for Ken, life was hell because. Okay, let's move on to several events that happened to him at the Hyoudou mansion. The next day Ken woke up, but as soon as he awoke, an explosion of glue hit his entire body. This surprised him, but then he was showered with pigeon feathers, making Ken look like a chicken. The girls nearly died laughing when they saw him, even Issei, who couldn't help but laugh at the sight of Ken like that, started laughing, as did Rias, who discreetly took a picture. The perpetrators were Ravel and Kuoh, who wanted to make his life a living hell before accusing him of what he did with the factions and planting false evidence to send him to Tartarus or level 8 prison. Upon leaving, he had to clean his entire room since it was covered in glue, and when he finished, he went downstairs where he saw Issei being fed by Akeno, who smiled at him as she ate. Of course, there were moments when she took advantage and gave him kisses, some short and some long, and sometimes lustful ones. Ken, seeing this, felt envious but decided not to say anything, and when he sat down, he stood up while his buttocks were covered in tacks. The person responsible for this was Asia, who accidentally put them in their seats. Asia arrived with a plate of food for Ken, who, upon taking the first bite of Asia's sushi, found it tasted too salty. Ken. Wow, it turned out great, Asia-chan. He said with a very forced smile. Asia. Thank you, Ken-kun, but could you call me Argento, please? She said with a fake smile, since she wouldn't let him call her by her name. Ken. Oh, sure. He said with a smile as he took another piece of sushi, but when he went to eat the next one, he quickly grabbed his glass of water and drank it. This was because Asia had put too much salt and hot sauce in Ken's sushi. Asia had made 2 moves to get revenge after what Ken did. She remembered all the nights she cried when she learned the truth and she wouldn't let him get away with it this time. To please Asia, Ken had to eat all the sushi, enduring both salty and spicy varieties. Ken thanked them for the food and they left. Ken arrived at Kuoh University where he enrolled and was given his uniform. While walking towards the Hyoudou mansion, he was pushed by someone and fell into a mud puddle. He looked for the culprit but only saw 2 cats. Upon arriving at the Hyoudou mansion, he went to the bathroom and took a nice hot bath, but less than 2 minutes passed before the hot water turned cold, leaving him no choice but to endure the cold bathwater. Irina was seen turning off the water heater and leaving, but praying. Irina. Forgive me, sir, but I want to avenge myself on this bastard for what he did to my beloved. Amen. She said as she left. When Ken went to his room, he saw that it was open, and when he entered, he saw his room destroyed and saw some strange beings playing with his notebooks and breaking them. It was the girl's relatives who brought their family members to destroy Ken's things. Ken had to wear one of his father's suits and go to the mall to spend money to replace his lost belongings. While sleeping, he cried out in pain because he felt a lightning bolt strike him directly. He went to the bathroom where he saw a mark on his chest, but when he touched it he felt a great pain and then he felt another lightning bolt where Ken fell unconscious. The one responsible for this was Akeno, who launched 2 non-lethal beams at him since she couldn't kill him for now but would do so later. She left with a smile, went to Issei's room and slept with him and his harem sisters. This was Ken's life, enduring pranks or seeing his things destroyed once a week. He had to endure Asia's horrible food, the awful treatment he received from Akeno, where she accidentally threw spicy ramen at his head, the spiciness getting into his eyes, and he had to wash them, feeling a burning sensation from the heat. The worst food was Rias, because once she made him ramen. When he tasted it, he liked the flavor, but when he finished, he realized his mouth was stuck together. She had put magic glue in the ramen so he couldn't speak or eat for 3 days, the duration of the glue's effect. Ken only endured their horrible cooking for 2 weeks, and he had to make his own food since he knew the 3 of them couldn't cook anything and they wouldn't let Issei cook. If you knew. Things weren't any better at school. On his first day, when he went to look for his school shoes, he found them covered in a disgusting sticky stuff that he didn't even know what it was. It wasn't glue, it wasn't jam, he didn't know what it was, but it tasted awful. The person responsible for this was Sona, who had a spellbook for making disgusting mixtures. In the end, he had to go barefoot since he couldn't wear his sneakers at school, but that wasn't the end of it. When break time arrived, he went to the cafeteria and they were serving the food given to the students, but when it was his turn he received a grey, gooey mess that he didn't even know what it was. But to save face, he decided to say it tasted delicious, but it tasted like spoiled food, like oatmeal that had been left unrefrigerated for days. In the end he had to eat it, but not even 5 minutes had passed before he went to the bathroom and vomited everything he had. In the cafeteria, the cook was seen taking off a disguise, revealing Yasaka, who gave her that thing that even she didn't know what it was. She just found it in the cafeteria's refrigerator. I went back to the classroom, but when I arrived I didn't see my backpack. I looked for it but found it in the school garden covered in mud, dirt and other sticky things. Upon arriving at the classroom, he received a scolding, and afterward, he went to get his sneakers, but when he saw them, they were frozen solid, literally encased in a cube of ice. Touching them caused him great pain, so he had to go and rest at the Hyoudou mansion. That was Ken's life. He didn't tell them anything because he wanted them all to trust him, but that was impossible. Ken was very frustrated because he couldn't get any of the girls to trust him, let alone talk to him. Ken tried to make conversations with the girls to get to know them, but even that hadn't worked. With Rias, she would just give him a very serious and annoyed face and leave, but not before telling him not to try to talk to her unless it was a real emergency. With Akeno, she was more aggressive towards him and threw a lightning bolt at him that almost knocked him unconscious. She told him that if he tried to speak to her again, she would kill him, to which he agreed, and from that day on he avoided Akeno. With Asia, it was easy, but I couldn't have a conversation with her because her relative kept electrocuting me and giving me a grumpy look. So he tried to get closer to her, but she was always with her family or one of her harem sisters. I couldn't have a conversation with Ravel because she gave me a hateful look and told me she didn't want to know about an idiot like me. He stopped trying with her because once he ate a dessert that was on the table, which was the worst mistake he ever made. Not even 5 minutes had passed when she arrived furious, attacked him, and beat him so badly that if it weren't for Asia, who reluctantly tried to treat him but didn't completely heal him, he would have been worse off. The next day, Ravel told him that if he ever ate one of Issei-sama's desserts again, she would burn him alive, no matter if Issei got angry with her. So Ken decided not to approach her, just as he did with Akeno. Things didn't go well with Ross, 1 because she was very cold towards him, 2 because she wouldn't let him make conversation, and 3 because she told him she didn't want trash like him talking to her unless it was very important. Things didn't go well for him with Kaneko. Kaneko wouldn't speak to him, and when he tried to take a candy that Issei gave her, she took him to the hospital because it broke all his ribs and almost tore his arms to pieces. The next day, Asia had to heal Ken again, but she did it because Issei asked her to. They were going to have a date, and to ensure her date with Issei, she healed him completely. Upon leaving the hospital, Kaneko approached him, where he thought she would apologize, but she didn't. "Kaneko. If you take one of my sweets that Issei-senpai gave me again, I'll seal you with my Nico power and make you suffer for all eternity, you hear me, idiot?" she said in an emotionless and very cold voice. In the end, Ken decided not to approach Kaneko, much less eat any candy he found in the house. Things didn't go well for him with Zenobia, as she was very cold towards him, and the time he tried to have a conversation with her, she just left, leaving Ken alone. But they thought that was it, but no, because the next day he saw that his body was covered in cuts, and Ken had to bandage it. While he was doing so, Zenobia passed by, left him a note, and then left without another word. He thought it would be a secret conversation, but it wasn't, because when he read it he was traumatized, since the paper said, "If you speak to me again, I'll leave you worse off than you already are." Ken decided not to talk to Zenobia because if he left it like that, it would be worse if she tried to do something to Issei. I couldn't have a conversation with Irina either, because she only gave me a cold and serious look. Ken tried everything, but ended up being thrown out the window by Irina, who, furious at being bothered, threw him out as a warning. Ken decided to distance himself from her since it was pointless. He also tried to get close to Yasaka, but she only told him to stay away from her. He had a plan to get closer to her through her daughter, where he tried to win Kunu's heart, but that was impossible. He gave her a cake to make Kunu come closer to him, but Kunu smeared that same cake all over his face. Kunu? Only Oka-san, my moms, and Odo-san can give me my presents, not you. She said as she left with her mother, who made a death gesture at her and warned her that if she tried to approach her daughter, she would suffer a mother's wrath. Ken was frustrated because he couldn't get close to Kunu, let alone Yasaka. He tried with Penemu, but only received a strong warning from her that if he tried to approach her or Issei, he would suffer her falling fury while she had a spear at his neck. With Gabriel, she would just give him a cold look and tell him to stay away from her, or else she would tell Penemu that he tried to grape her. Ken decided not to go near her, or else he would be torn to pieces or worse, tortured. Sarafel and Sona only gave him a cold stare, and when he tried to greet them the next day, he ended up in a frozen chandelier where he remained for days until he barely escaped. Lefay was very cold towards him, so much so that when he tried to approach the sorceress, he only ended up with his teeth broken by one of her spells. Things didn't go any better for him with Kuroka as he tried to get close to her but received the worst beating from her. If it weren't for the fact that he was forbidden to kill him, she would have killed him right there. Things didn't go well for him with Office. He tried to approach her, but she just stared at him with an emotionless expression. He tried to get closer anyway, but she sent him flying with a single punch. Now he knew better than to get close to any of Issei's girls. Ken decided to leave the Hyoudou mansion because he couldn't stand the treatment he received. Rias and the others smiled, knowing they would now make their next move. Rias? Well, now that that bastard's gone, Lefay, it's your turn. She said with a smile. Asia? If you'll excuse me, I have a date with Issei-san. She said while wearing her best clothes for her date. Rias? Lucky girl, she said with a pout, as did the others, but Sarafel threw a tantrum like a child. Sarafel? It's not fair. I want a date with Issei-chan too. She said while jumping around like a little girl. Sona? Don't worry, we'll teach Issei the pleasures of the Sitri when the time comes. She said with a smile. Sarafel smiled and hugged her sister. Rias? Not if I used to be her favorite, she said with a superior smile. So once Ken had saved up all his money, he moved to a small house because he couldn't stand the treatment he received and also the salty or spicy food he was served. Ken was asleep, but his window opened, revealing Lefay, who gave him a book and left. The next day he woke up and saw the book. Ken, upon seeing it, realized it was a book of spells and how to cast them. Ken smiled and began his plan to get revenge and make Issei's women his own. 6 months later. Ken knew he was ready, so he began his plan. With a stealth spell, he entered the Hyoudou mansion and walked through the hallways. Ken arrived at Issei's room where he saw him sleeping, and Issei smiled and began to cast his manipulation spell. Ken had an arrogant smile, but behind him were some girls who were looking at Ken with great fury. Then they all pounced on Ken and started hitting him and tying him up. Ken tried to fight, but there were too many girls, and he ended up being subdued. Ken? What the hell? He said while looking at Issei's entire harem with a serious and emotionless expression. Rias? You thought you could get away with it, you bastard. She said seriously as she slapped him hard with the power of destruction, making him scream in pain. Akeno? We knew you were coming, so this time we're going to get rid of you. She said seriously. That's how they create a magic circle and take it to another place. So they arrived at an abandoned warehouse and took out various torture devices. Ken? What will they do to me? They're crazy. He said while trying to escape, but it was impossible. Yasaka? We won't take you to the mass that easily, we'll get revenge on you for what you did, she said seriously. Ken? What the hell did I do to you? Do I owe you money or what? He said while looking at them angrily. Rias? We knew your plan to manipulate Issei, to make him extremely jealous, to make him hit us and grape us so he could be with you, she said seriously and angrily. Ken was speechless. He hadn't told anyone the plan, and they all knew what it was going to be. Ken? How the hell did they know my plan? I didn't even tell my friends or family. He said while looking at them. Rias? We'll tell you the truth. We had a vision of how you deceived us all, how you manipulated Issei, how we left him for you, and how she said with a lump in her throat and tears streaming down her face. Akeno? Since he committed suicide because of your damned fault, we will inflict the worst damage upon you before sending you to the mass and sending you to level 8 prison so that you suffer for all eternity, she said while holding lightning bolts in her hands. Ken's screams were heard at the scene, and anyone who had been nearby would have fled in terror. In Mexico. Roberto was seen with some materials for making weapons. Roberto? Do you think these materials are good for making weapons? They absorbed a lot of sunlight. Tell me, do you think they're perfect? He said while looking at a guy with glasses. Juan. I still can't believe those superhumans who defeated you. Tell me, if they're weak to the sun, why didn't you send the leader there to die? He said, but Roberto had a serious expression. Roberto. You think I didn't try? Those superhumans have different abilities. One of them is that common and divine weapons can't kill them, nor can lethal magic, poisonous or explosive magic. And your question about why I didn't take him to the sun is easy. He said while Juan waited for his answer. Roberto. Those superhumans can block your magic abilities, armor, summons, everything. Rentaro tried to use his scream to kill Upper Moon 6, but he failed, and when he realized it, he was killed by that Hyoudou guy and all his wives. When Razor realized he couldn't use his flames, he tried to fight with ordinary weapons, but they could only stop him for a while before they died from Upper Moon 4 Hantengu's attacks. He said seriously. Roberto. Kuoh tried to use his spear against Upper Moon 5 Gyako, but when he realized he couldn't use the spear's power, it was too late. Kiba, when he tried to use his speed and summon his swords, was quickly killed by Upper Moon 1 Kakushibo. Everyone died, and only I remained. I tried to fight Muzan, but all my abilities were blocked. Asper tried to freeze them, but it was only long enough to kill Upper Moon 6, 5, and 4 before he lost his powers and was killed by Upper Moon 3 Akaza, he said while looking at him. Juan. I understand now why he went back to the past, but tell me how you did it if you say those superhumans block their abilities, he said while looking at him. Roberto. It's simple. Kurumi lent me a little of her power so I could use my spell and start my plan B. When I was about to be defeated, I used that little bit of power and miraculously returned to the past before being killed by Muzan. He said seriously. Juan. I see, but I don't think these weapons are the only thing you have in mind, he said while looking at him. Roberto. I have a plan, but I need you to make me a katana to start, he said as Juan nodded. Scene change. Things were very confusing for Issei. From the day his brother returned, his girls became twice or three times as affectionate with him. From being bathed by all his girls, to being prevented from going to the store for anything, even Penemu and Sona, who were the coldest, were the most affectionate. Every time Issei woke up, he felt Rias or Akeno's breasts against his face, making him have a perverted expression. When she came downstairs, her food was ready, and Kaneko, Ravel, Office, and Kunu would inevitably sit on her lap, where they would even have a mini-war to see who would get to sit on her legs. The girls wouldn't leave him alone for a minute, or well, only when he went to the bathroom they did, but otherwise they didn't. But the girls increasingly wanted to cross the line and have relationships with him, although he liked this and wanted to keep his promise, but everything changed one day when he returned home after making a contract. Flashback. Issei. I'm home, he said as he noticed everything was turned off. He walked for a while and went up to his room, where upon entering his room he found it locked. Issei was confused, but he sensed a very sweet and addictive aroma that made his breathing heavy and his friend grow. Issei. Drag, what's wrong? He said while speaking to his partner. Drag. This room is full of aphrodisiacs and hormones, she said seriously, but she was jealous. Then some red lights turned on, and Issei was surprised and excited to see all his girls wearing very provocative lingerie. Note. I couldn't find any pictures of Benya and Ilmenhold, sorry. Issei. Girls, he said, blushing and excited. Rias. Issei, how are you? She said while walking provocatively, making Issei want to pounce on Rias and make her his right there. Akeno. How are we seeing each other? She said while Issei was drooling from how excited he was. Isaka. Issei, you know Kunu is expecting a little brother, right? Why don't we give him one tonight? She said while her large breasts moved. Issei. Are you sure, girls? I warn you, if you keep this up, I won't stop. He said while trying to stay calm, but it was impossible because of the aphrodisiac and hormones. Rias approaches her and gives her a passionate kiss. Rias. We're sure, we can't wait until the wedding, we want to be marked by you, she said as Issei lost control and began kissing Rias where they both fell onto the bed. In the room, the screams and groans of pleasure from Issei and the girls could be heard. The difference between Ken controlling Issei to grape the girls, and this time Issei and his girls enjoyed it, although of course they had to endure the pain of losing their virginity again. But this time Issei was gentle with them at first, but then he knew how to take them. Note. Yasaka became a virgin again thanks to a spell. Vindel flashback. After that, their bond grew stronger, but he noticed that his girls had tattoos on their bodies, much to Issei's confusion and Mio's jealousy. Mio didn't say anything, but Office did tell him that from today on, they were his property. Issei was happy, but one day he noticed that his girls were leaving at night and returning in the morning. Issei noticed that they were relaxed as they left, but Issei asked Drag if he could see their auras, where they only had his aura and no one else's. Issei figured it was probably just the late night shopping that was a new trend in Kuoh, so he didn't pay much attention to it. Although of course, when they went out, 2 or 3 of their girls stayed behind. This was life for Issei these days, but this day would mark Issei's life. Scene change. Issei was eating next to his girls. But they looked at Irina angrily, and we'll find out why. Rias. It's not fair, Irina. How could you give Issei a morning blowjob? It was my turn. She said while pouting. Irina. Well, I had to hug his leg and I saw mini Issei awake, so I took care of him. She said with a smile. Issei remembered when he came in Irina's mouth and Rias woke up. So a fight broke out between them, but in the end Rias gave her morning blowjob, although if it weren't a school day all her girls would have had an orgy all day long. They were about to fight again, but a magic circle appeared in the room where they saw Sirzechs appear. Rias. Brother, what's wrong? She said while looking at him. Sirzechs. We have to go to Aztec territory now, he said as everyone nodded. Thus everyone teleports to Aztec territory. Upon arriving, they saw the place filled with supernatural beings. There were many supernatural beings and also the leaders of different factions. Issei. What's happening? He said, confused. So they step forward and see Roberto enter in an elegant suit. His Aztecs bow slightly and as he sits down he taps his judge's gavel. Roberto. Very well everyone, thank you for coming, to the jury who are the mass of all factions, thank you for coming despite your many duties, and well, let this trial begin, he said as he struck his gavel again. Roberto. Bring the accused Ken Hyoudou to the stand, he said while 2 Aztecs had Ken, who had many wounds and was missing many teeth and also had no voice because it had been cut off. Thus he was forced to sit down and his trial began. Roberto. Well, Ken Hyoudou, you are accused, according to the report, of raping 60 women in the United States, specifically California, extorting several people, fraud, attempted betrayal, raping many supernatural women, murdering several supernatural beings, and attempting to assassinate the Pillar of the Alliance. He said while everyone murmured. Issei didn't believe his brother did that. He wasn't like that, was he? Ken tried to defend himself, but because his tongue had been cut out, he could no longer speak. Roberto. Ken Hyoudou doesn't need a lawyer since there's too much evidence against him, he said as a large screen was lowered where everyone would witness what Ken Hyoudou did. The recording showed many girls from the United States being raped by Ken. Everyone watched as Ken abused them mercilessly and enjoyed doing it. They also saw how he scammed many people and defrauded many others to become a millionaire, which he was not. The murmurs started immediately. Even Issei didn't believe this. Roberto. Well, there's the proof of what Ken Hyoudou did. Now let's move on to the grapes Ken Hyoudou committed against various supernatural beings. He said this while showing how Ken abused many angels who became fallen because of him, surprising Michael, since he didn't expect so many of his angels to fall because of Ken. They were also fallen, to Azazel's surprise. Demons, to Sirzechs' surprise and Sarafel's feigned surprise. And Valkyries, to Odin's and Aztec surprise. All the mass glared angrily at Ken for what he had done, and Ken tried to deny it, but his severed tongue made it impossible for him to speak. Roberto. Well, let's move on now to the murders he committed against supernatural beings, he said while photos were shown of him murdering many supernatural beings with magic or weapons, where everyone saw that Ken mercilessly killed even women and children. Everyone glared angrily at Ken, even Issei, who saw some children begging for his life, something he didn't care about. Roberto. Now let's move on to the most important thing. Ken Hyoudou's attempted assassination of Issei Hyoudou, he said while Issei watched this. This is how Ken was seen entering the Hyoudou mansion with a knife and Samuel's blood to kill him. So he entered the room where Issei was sleeping, and everyone saw how he was about to kill him, but they saw how his girls arrived in time and subdued him and took away his weapon. They watched as they took Ken to Roberto so that he could take care of him. So everyone looked at Ken angrily, and Sirzechs approached Ken and kicked him in the thigh, making him kneel, and Sarafel kneed him, making Ken fall to the ground. Issei approached him, his glove active and his gem glowing brightly. Once Issei was close to Ken, he punched him in the ribs, breaking the. Issei. Take this trash away, he's not my brother anymore, he said as some Aztecs entered and took him away, but before they could take him, Roberto spoke. Roberto. Well, now that all the evidence mentioned by the jury is here, he said while looking at the mass. Zeus. There's no need to say it if you already know the answer, he said as all the leaders nodded. Roberto. Alright, take Ken Hyoudou to prison level 8. And don't worry, Ken, we've got you a special cell, full of black people. He said with an arrogant smile as Ken screamed while the Aztecs took him away. Some time later. Issei was seen looking at the sky, but then Rias and the others appeared and sat down next to him. In the case of Kaneko and Ravel, they sat on his lap. Kaneko. Senpai, are you okay? She said while looking at him. Issei. Why didn't you tell me that Ken tried to kill me? He said while looking at them. Akeno. We didn't want to tell you since he was your brother, she said while resting her head on his shoulder. Rias. Besides, it would have been hard for you if your own brother had tried to kill you, she said while leaning on his other shoulder. Issei. I don't understand. We used to get along so well, why did he try to do that? He said, not understanding Ken's reasons. Yasaka. Envy made him do that. He saw everything you had and tried to take it away from you. She said while sitting and looking at the stars. Issei. I guess you're right, he said while hugging Rias and Akeno, who hugged him back. Issei. I love you girls, he said while looking at them. All. Us too, they said as they approached and kissed Issei, who returned the kisses to each of them. So they entered the mansion and had another night of Hex, but without pleasure, only love. And what happened to Ken? Flashback. Ken was being led by two Aztecs, and upon arriving at a cell, they opened it and threw Ken out. Several black men looked at Ken lustfully, causing him to back away. Man. Fresh meat, come kiss my hot lips, he said while grabbing Ken by the waist, but hears a thud which makes him back a little. Aztec. Boss Roberto has a letter and a gift for you, he said while holding up a letter. Blacks. Mr. Roberto, they said with surprise since it was not at all common to send letters to prisoners, much less gifts. Aztecs. Says, guys enjoy this bitch however you want and as my courtesy gift so you can see I'm not such a shit, I'll give you this gift, he said while the Aztec started a spell and at the end he throws it towards Ken who screams in pain. Everyone was watching this, but when it ended they were surprised to see that Ken was a girl. Ken. What? He said, unable to believe what he was now. Azteca. And that's your gift for the entire prison, level 8. At the end, she says, enjoy her. From now on, she is your property from this day forward. She said this while the prisoners screamed with excitement because now they would have a Hex slave. Ken. Don't go away, he said in a timid and frightened voice, which excited the black people. The black men began to tear off his clothes and the orgy began, with Ken as the star. Ken. I hate you Roberto, he screamed and his scream was heard throughout the prison. Black. Don't talk bad about Mr. Bitch, you need a mouthwash, he said while putting his member in her mouth. Black. And move that tongue well, he said while forcing her to insert and withdraw his member. Thus Ken became the bore for the entire prison, from being raped by her cellmates to being raped in the dining hall by other inmates. It was entertainment for the entire prison, where Ken's life was now to be everyone's slave. With Roberto. He moved his katana in different ways. Roberto. Now I understand, with this style I created we can defeat Musin and his moons, he said as he left the room of time. Juan. So, were you able to create something to defeat those superhumans? He said while looking at it. Roberto. Yes, now I need you to bring Issei and his harem, Kiba, Gasp, Saji, Kuoh, Volley and their respective groups, Futuro, Tadano, Ryota, Rentaro, Shido and Naoto, so that he can begin his training, he said while nodding. Roberto. Thinking, in 20 years we will meet again, Musin, and this time Issei will defeat you, I assure you. He said as he left. Chapter 3 Training. Issei woke up naked in his room with his girls after that night of Hex without pleasure, only love. Issei walked to his wardrobe and opened it, got dressed, and went downstairs to make breakfast. When she went downstairs she saw her parents with breakfast ready. Eru. Good morning, son, he said while taking a cup of coffee. Issei. Good morning, father, he said while eating breakfast. Mickey. Good morning, son, she said while pouring him a cup of coffee. Issei. Good morning, Oka-san, he said with a smile. Roberto. Good morning Issei, he said while taking a cup. Issei. Good morning Roberto-sama, he said while drinking his coffee. At that moment, Issei spits out his coffee and sees Roberto. Issei. Roberto-sama, what are you doing here? He said with surprise since these visits were common. Roberto. Well, I came here to talk to you and your women, but Mrs. Mickey received me and invited me to breakfast. He said while Issei understood. Mickey. It was nothing, just call me Mickey please, she said with a smile. Roberto. Sure, Mickey, and well, first we have to have breakfast so we can talk, he said as Issei nodded. Some time later. Issei, the girls, and Roberto were seen together. Issei. Let me see if I understand. You need us to train for 20 years to face those superhumans. He said, unable to believe it. Roberto. Well, yes, in 20 years some beings will appear that will be a threat to all of humanity. I had that vision, and they are so strong that I need everyone's help. He said seriously. Issei. Why don't I look into the origin of those superhumans? He said seriously. Roberto. I searched everywhere, Issei. I searched for Musin's name and all his moons, but I found nothing. It seems those superhumans will first appear in China and then their appearance will spread everywhere. He said seriously. Issei. I understand, well I won't let those superhumans kill a single supernatural being or human, he said with a serious expression. Roberto. That's the spirit. He said while teleporting everyone to where Sona's entourage was, Razor and his entourage, Volley and his group, Kuoh and his group, Kiba, Gasper, Futuro, Tadano, Ryota, Naoto, Shido, Rentaro and his large harem of girlfriends. Roberto. Well, now that we're all here, let your torture begin your training. He said with a smile. They all felt a chill, but they didn't back down, and they followed Roberto. They reached a mountain where it was difficult to breathe. Roberto. Well, we're in a very special room so you can adapt to the environment where you'll be fighting. You'll spend 5 years here, but only 1 day outside, so start your training. He said as everyone began their training. Roberto blocked all the boys' abilities, preventing them from using their powers for this training. Day 1. Roberto. This will be harder than it looks, he said, seeing everyone on the ground, very tired. Roberto. What are you doing there? Stand up, trash. He shouted as everyone got scared and stood up. So it started with doing 1000 push-ups, squats, sit-ups and running 5 kilometers until the end of the day, or else they would go without breakfast. Thus, everyone had to train harder, Issei and the boys, who more than once were on the verge of death. Mio used to mock everyone as she watched them train like humans, but her laughter stopped when Roberto freed her and forced her to train for battle as well. Albion decided to say nothing when he saw Mio training and decided to watch everyone else train instead. Day 2. Razor. No, 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 mercy. He said, but Roberto kicked him, sending him and his group flying into a waterfall. Day 3. Issei. A scream of pain as he feels a punch to his stomach from Roberto. Roberto. Your senses are weak, train more Hyoudou, he said as he left. Day 4. Everyone was running at a great speed, why? Well, Roberto's sons were chasing them, but what's wrong with that? Well, they had chainsaws while they were running at high speed. At the end, everyone looked hurt, some more than others, especially Rentaro, who sacrificed himself for his girlfriends and ended up badly injured. 2 weeks later. At that time, everyone could be seen doing the exercise without problems, where now they do the morning exercise without problems. Roberto was even observing everyone's progress, since they first needed a certain level of physical fitness to learn what he had learned. Roberto. Well guys, you did a good job, now let's go to the mountain for your next training session, he said as they nodded. So they arrive at a great mountain where they see that there is only vegetation, trees and nothing else. Roberto. Well, you'll have to come down from the mountain. If you don't arrive by 8 p.m., you'll go without dinner, so good luck. He said as he disappeared without another word. They looked around and started to descend, but less than 2 seconds later they were met with spears, arrows, logs, traps, etc. So they descended at great speed, but the traps and attacks made it difficult for them. Worse still was that everyone was having trouble breathing, and they all ended up falling into Roberto's traps. Issei. Roberto-sama wants to kill us, he said while having arrows in his body and a spear on his shoulder. Finally, everyone came down at 1 a.m. where Roberto treated everyone, especially Rentaro, who suffered serious injuries to his body while protecting his girls. Roberto. You know you won't be his shield forever, right? He said as he removed 3 spears from Rentaro's thighs. Rentaro. I know, but I wouldn't want to see them hurt. I hope you understand. He said while looking at Roberto. Roberto. I know that well, but they absolutely need to train. You can't be their shield. If you do, they'll be worse off when they fight those demons, or worse, those moons. You know you're only making them dependent on you, so as their trainer, you're strictly forbidden from protecting your girls during training. He said very seriously while finishing healing him. What neither of them knew was that their girlfriends overheard and felt bad because Roberto was right. Rentaro was their shield and they couldn't keep depending on him. Several weeks passed, and Rentaro stopped protecting his girls during training at their request, as they no longer wanted to see him hurt by them. It was difficult for him, but he accepted, although of course that doesn't mean he doesn't care about them. Weeks turned into months, and months into years, and now they were in good physical condition. Everyone without exception was physically strong, and Roberto was a witness to that. Roberto. They're ready, he said seriously. Some time later. Roberto. Okay everyone, the warm-up is over. After so long, it's time for the stone training. He said while everyone didn't understand. Thus they were sent to different places, but alone, where their only company was a large stone. Roberto. Well, in this training you will train alone, this time you will train separately. In this training you will have to split this large stone in half with your katana. Find a way to split the stone and if you succeed you will be able to learn the techniques I was able to learn, he said while everyone listened to his voice. Roberto. One thing, if they break the katana, I'll break their legs myself, he said in a voice that would scare even Zeus and Hercules. Everyone was terrified. Some even fainted because of that voice. Thus began his training on the stone where no one else could do it. They began physical training where both Issei and the others did very hard training, but it was very difficult to break the leg. It would be too easy to break her with her powers, but Roberto had sealed her powers even offices, who had the physical conditions of a normal human. Issei was making a move where he hits the stone, but it did nothing to it. Issei. This is impossible, he said while looking at his katana, which was very worn from use. You need help. It took me 3 years to cut the stone, but I did it. Said a voice where Issei turns around and sees a red-haired boy with crimson eyes and a mark on his forehead. Issei. Who are you? He said, looking at him. Tanjiro. My name is Tanjiro Kamado, and I can see you need help with this training. He said as Issei nodded. Tanjiro. Don't worry, I'll train you. We need all the help we can get to stop Muzan Kibutsuji. He said seriously. Issei. You know him? He said, surprised. Tanjiro. Yes, my friends and I were able to defeat him 200 years ago, but the price was dying alongside him. He said seriously. Note. In this story, everyone died in the final battle, and the reason the true demons and angels didn't help was because of the Great War. Issei. What are his powers like? He said, looking at him. Tanjiro. He's too strong. Even we, using our full power, couldn't face him if it weren't for Lady Tomeo's sacrifice to weaken him and the master, he said seriously. Thus they both spoke, and Issei knew that it was a ghost who had come to help him with his training, and so they both began their training. Elsewhere. Rias could be seen trying to cut the stone, but it was impossible for her. Rias. This is impossible, she said while wiping away her sweat. I see you need help, said a girl's voice. Rias turned around and saw a girl shorter than her, with huge breasts just like hers and pink hair with green tips. Rias. Who are you? She said, looking at the girl. Mitsuri. Excuse me, my name is Mitsuri Kanroji, and I see you need help, she said while looking at her. Rias. Yes, but how can you help me? She said, unsure. Mitsuri draws her katana, and with a movement that Rias didn't see, Mitsuri made a vertical cut, slashing through all the trees in her path. Rias felt a liquid on her cheek and saw that she was bleeding from her cheek. Mitsuri. Forgive me, I hurt you, she said while checking her wound. Rias had a bead of sweat on her brow when she saw that Mitsuri was somewhat innocent, so they started talking, and Rias accepted Mitsuri's help. Thus Mitsuri made Rias suffer with her training. Elsewhere. Hyoudou could be seen trying to cut the stone. Hyoudou. Damn, it's impossible, he said while preparing his katana again. You piece of trash, that's not how you hold a katana. He said as Hyoudou turned around angrily. Hyoudou. How could you call me an idiot? He said, but received a powerful blow to his stomach that knocked the wind out of him. Tsunemi. Show me some respect, you imbecile. My name is Tsunemi Shinazagawa, and I'll be your chin from this day forward, so get ready, because I'm going to make you suffer in the worst way possible. He said while looking at him with a demented smile. Hyoudou. We'll see about that. He said as he got into a fighting stance. Thus, they both launched themselves into the place where Hyoudou's training would begin, through beatings and much pain. Elsewhere. Zenobia could be seen trying to cut the stone, but all she could do was make a small crack. Zenobia. Damn, this is harder than Griselda-sensei's training. She said while trying again. You know you're holding that katana wrong, right? He said as Zenobia turned around. Zenobia. Who are you? She said as she looked at him. Genya. My name is Genya Shinazagawa and I've come to help you. He said while Zenobia looked at him. Zenobia. How can you help me? She said while looking at him. Genya effortlessly uproots a tree and throws it to a great height, surprising Zenobia, who was astonished since no human could do that. Zenobia. I accept, she said as Genya began his training with her. Elsewhere. Akeno was seen trying to cut the rock, but it was impossible for her. Akeno. This is impossible, she said while looking at her very worn katana. It looks like you need a lot of help, he said as he came out of the trees. Akeno saw a blonde boy who had a small smile. Akeno. Who are you? She said as she looked at him. Zenitsu. My name is Zenitsu Agatsuma and I'm going to train you, he said with a smile. Akeno. I don't believe you. I bet you're a pervert who wants to look at my breasts. She said seriously, since what happened with Ken, Akeno didn't let any man except Issei near her. Zenitsu. No, 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 I won't do it. If I do that, my little Nezuko-chan will kill me. He said nervously, as behind him a black-haired girl was giving Zenitsu a cold stare to make sure he didn't do anything perverted. Akeno didn't want to accept, but she had to overcome this challenge, so she accepted, but without trusting Zenitsu. Elsewhere. Rentaro could be seen trying to cut the stone, but it was impossible for him. Rentaro. Damn it, this is impossible. If I keep going like this, I'll break it. he said while looking at his katana. Wow, you have an extravagant katana, if you didn't know, he said as a platinum-haired boy came out behind him. Rentaro. Who are you? He said while looking at him. Yuzui. My name is Tenjin Yuzui, and I am the god of festivals, and I see that you need my help, he said while looking at him. Rentaro. This training is difficult, he said while looking at him. Yuzui. Don't worry, I'll give you the most extravagant training of all, and that way you'll be able to protect your girlfriend from demons. He said while striking a pose. Rentaro. Actually, I have 100 handcuffs, he said as Yuzui fell to the floor as the words 100 handcuffs echoed in his mind. Yuzui. Well, we'll get along very well, boy. So, let's begin training with the flamboyant god of festivals. He said as Rentaro began training with Yuzui. Elsewhere. Ravel could be seen trying to cut the stone, but it was impossible for him. Ravel. At this rate, I won't be of any help to Issei-senpai. It's not that I want to help him, no, I just want him to not be burdened too much because of what's coming. She said while making an excuse. Tasty, said a voice coming from the forest, and when it came out you could see an orange-haired boy with an owl hairstyle. Ravel. Who are you? He said as he looked at him. Tasty, he said as he finished. Rengoku. Excuse me, young lady, my name is Kaijiro Rengoku, and from today onwards, I will be your sensei. He said while looking at her. Ravel. I don't need your help, I can do this myself, she said while making a movement to cut the stone but couldn't. Ravel tried again and again, while Rengoku just watched her with a smile as he took out a bento box and ate. 1 hour later. Ravel's face was seen red as he looked at Rengoku. Ravel. I accept your help, it's not that I want you to help me, I just don't want to be rude, said Sundere while looking away with a red face. Rengoku. Thinking, Sundere he thought with a smile as he began his training. Elsewhere. Asia could be seen trying to cut the rock, but it was impossible for her. Asia. Of all of us, I'm the weakest, so I won't be able to help Issei-san. She said while looking at her worn katana. You're weak, but that doesn't mean you can't fight. He said as a girl emerged from the shadows. Asia saw a girl who had a warm smile, so she saw her. Shinobu. It's a pleasure. My name is Shinobu Kacho, and it will be a pleasure to train you. She said with a smile. Asia. You'll train me, I appreciate it, but I don't think I'll be of much help. I'm not as strong as Rias Onisan, Akeno Onisan, Kaneko-san, and Kuroka-senpai. I'm just a healer. She said with her head down. Shinobu. You remind me of myself. I couldn't even behead demons. I had to poison them. Do you know how angry I was being weak? I wanted to have a strong body like One-chan, but I realized that only I can know my limits. She said with a smile. Asia looked at Shinobu and knew in her heart that she could trust her, so she accepted, and they both began their training. Elsewhere. Tadano could be seen trying to cut the stone, but it was impossible. Tadano. At this rate, I'll break the katana, he said, looking at his very worn katana. You're being too rough with that katana, at this rate you're going to break it, said a voice. Tadano turned around and saw a boy with long hair and blue tips. Tadano. Who are you? He said while looking at him. Takedo. My name is Takedo Michiro, and I've come to train you, he said while looking at him. Tadano. How can I trust you? He said, looking at him. Takedo draws his katana and moves at great speed, and as he finishes, Tadano feels the top part of his clothes tear. Tadano had his torso uncovered, revealing his chest, abdomen, and back. Tadano. Okay, I trust you. Please teach me so I can protect my women. He said as Takedo nodded. Thus they both began their training, where Takedo was very demanding of Tadano. Elsewhere. Saji could be seen trying to cut the stone, but it was impossible for him. Saji. At this rate, this katana will break, he said, looking at his katana. Vitra. You have to keep going, partner. At this rate, you won't be able to learn any of the breathing techniques Roberto-sama speaks of. He said seriously. You're useless, at this rate you'll break that katana, said a boy who came out of the trees. Saji turns around and sees a boy with black hair, a snake around his neck, and eyes of a different color. Saji. Who are you calling a useless dickhead? He said, but received a punch that sent him flying into some trees, which he broke with his body. Iguro. Show some respect. I am Iguro Abanai and I will be your sensei, so get used to it because I will make your life a living hell. He said while looking at him. Saji tried to stand up, but his injuries prevented him from doing so, especially when Iguro approached him and stepped on his head. Saji. You damned bastard. He said, grabbing his foot and sending him crashing into a tree. Thus they both begin a fight where neither stops and in the end Saji was tied to a tree with several blows and some cuts, while Iguro healed some blows to his face. Iguro. Not bad, you hurt my leg and my right arm, congratulations. Not even that damn Tanjiro did this to me. He said while looking at Saji tied up. Elsewhere. Sarafel could be seen trying to cut the stone, but it was impossible for her. Sarafel. How is it possible that I can't cut it if I'm a Mau? She said while looking at the stone that she couldn't even cut. You're wearing that katana out. At this rate, the katana will break. Said a voice. Sarafel turned around and saw a boy with black hair. Tomioka. Nice to meet you, my name is Gyu Tomioka. It's a pleasure. He said with a smile. Sarafel. Nice to meet you, but why are you here? She said, looking at him. Tomioka. I've come here to train you, so get ready, because I'll be your sensei from today onwards. He said seriously. Sarafel sensed something in him, she sensed great talent in him, and she could feel it, so she nodded, and they both began their training. Elsewhere. Irina could be seen trying to cut the stone, but it was impossible for her. Irina. It's useless, even though I've been trying to cut the stone I can't, she said, while imagining herself on her knees with comical tears and seeing Issei looking at her with contempt and walking away with his other harem sisters. Irina. No, Issei would never leave me, not again. I'm sure Zenobia is doing her part too. I have to do mine. She said while looking at her worn katana. I'm glad you didn't give up despite the obstacles, said a voice where Irina looked and saw a dark-haired girl who had a smile. Irina. Who are you? She said while looking at her. Kani. My name is Kani Kacho, and I will be your teacher from today onwards, she said with a smile. Irina. Yes, thank you sir for giving me help, amen, she said with a smile while holding her hands in a prayer position. Kani. It was very quick to convince you. Well, let's begin your training. She said with a smile. Elsewhere. Naoto could be seen trying to cut the rock, but it was impossible for him. Naoto. Damn, in my chainsaw mode I would have destroyed it, but I can't, he said while looking at the stone as if nothing had happened. You're weak, you know, but fear not, for the king of the mountain will train you, said a boy with a boar's head. Naoto saw him and wasn't very convinced, since besides being shorter than him, he didn't seem to have great potential. Naoto. I don't think you'll be of much help, he said while looking at him. Inosuke. How dare you refuse the help of the mountain king? I, Inosuke Hashibira, will show you who the king is. He said as he lunged towards Naoto. They both started a fight where they were evenly matched, but Naoto was surprised to see that Inosuke was too flexible, as he saw his leg bend 3 times and his arm 5 times. The worst part was that he didn't break any limbs. 30 minutes later. Naoto looked badly beaten, while Inosuke barely had any bruises. Naoto. Okay, I accept your help. He said while looking at him. Inosuke. That's more like it. He said while celebrating his victory. Elsewhere. Ryota was seen trying to cut the stone, but because he was so strong, he almost broke the katana. He knew he could break it with his strength, but he couldn't do it that way. He had to use his katana. Ryota. This is impossible, I could break it with my strength, but the point of doing this is that I have to cut it, he said while looking at his katana at the last minute as it was close to breaking. That katana isn't for you, boy. You need a better weapon to fight with. Said a voice behind him. Ryota turned around and saw a guy over 2 meters tall, with great muscles and wide eyes. Jayame. It's a pleasure, young man. My name is Jayame Himejima, and from today onward, I will be your teacher. He said, while Ryota wasn't so sure. Ryota. I don't know if I can trust you, he said while looking at him. Jayame. Hit me and you'll see, he said while Ryota wasn't sure but decided to do it, but Ryota was a little surprised since Jayame didn't move an inch. Jayame. You haven't used all your strength, do it, don't hold back, he said as Ryota decided to do it, where Ryota was surprised since Jayame only moved barely 2 centimeters. Jayame. My turn, he said as he punched him in the stomach with the palm of his hand, and Ryota was on the ground 2 seconds later while catching his breath. Ryota. Thinking, this guy is really strong, and that was just his palm strike. I can't imagine what he'll do with his fist. He thought as he regained his composure. Ryota. I accept your help, sensei, he said as Jayame began to train Ryota. Elsewhere. Haneko was seen trying to cut the stone, but it was the same case as Ryota. She would break the katana in minutes. Haneko. This is impossible. At this rate, I'll only be a burden to Issei-senpai. She said, disappointed in herself as she saw her badly damaged katana. You need help, don't you? Said a voice behind her. Haneko turned around and saw a girl about her own height, with a ponytail adorned with a butterfly and a smile. Hanao. It's a pleasure, my name is Kanao Sayuri, and from today onwards I will train you. She said with a smile. Haneko. I don't think so, no offense, but you don't seem like a strong person, she said while looking at her. Hanao. I'll show you, she said as in the blink of an eye Kanao moved at incredible speed where in the end Kaneko was seen on the ground defeated. Kaneko. How? She said in surprise as she tried to stand up. Now. Now you trust me? She said with a small smile as she helped Kaneko to her feet. Kaneko. I accept, she said as Kanao smiled and they began. Thus, those who received help from strangers began to train relentlessly, and of course, none of them had it easy, especially Futuro, who received the worst beatings from his sensei. Elsewhere. Ken was seen in prison level 8 in his cell, while a large amount of semen came out of his vagina, anus and mouth. 2 months had passed since Ken became the personal bitch of the entire level 8 prison. The guards had to give her a personal prison because she was abused every day by her cellmates and to prevent her from being killed by extreme penetration. Her morning began when a guard came for her and sent her to her cell with her companions, where it started with an orgy where she was the star. In the prison dining hall, she had to have sex with the cook to receive food for the day. When she finished eating, the prisoners abused her. Ken tried to hide, but it was useless, and Ken ended up being the dog in the dining room. She could only rest during exercise time, which she spent peacefully, but it wasn't because the prisoners gave her the privilege of resting. It was on Roberto's orders, who instructed them to prevent her from being killed for so many grapes. At night, several prisoners abused her for their pleasure, and in the end, a calendar was made so that she wouldn't be the bitch she was in the dining hall. The prisoners, with the little money they had, would buy Ken little things, but they were mostly lingerie, perfumes, and aphrodisiacs. They rarely gave her sweets or things she wanted. Ken was seen walking around the library while looking at the books. Some prisoners were there, but during exercise they were forbidden from touching Ken. Ken. Thinking, damn Roberto, I swore I'll kill you myself when I get the chance. He thought as he walked. Ken bumps into someone and thinks it's a prisoner. Ken. I'm sorry, he said while looking at him. No problem, it seems you haven't been doing well, have you? He said, looking at Ken. Ken. It seems so, he said while looking at the guy. Yes, I know, the same thing happened to me as to you, she said while looking at him. Ken. Who are you? He said, looking at him. Morton. My name is Donald Morton, he said while looking at her. Ken. Morton, I've heard your name, but why are you here? He said while looking at him. Morton. You know what 9/11 was? He said while looking at him. Ken nods. Morton. I was responsible. I was also responsible for several worldwide attacks, he said seriously. Ken was surprised to learn that. Ken. I don't understand. I thought the person responsible for that terrorist attack was killed. He said while looking at him. Morton. Do you seriously think the United States was attacked? No, I was a very high-ranking general, I had many contacts, wealth, everything, but I was offered a large sum of money to carry out that attack. He said seriously. Ken. Why did the United States do that to its own country? He said while looking at him. Morton. He did it to gain access to the global aviation system. He would be responsible for knowing everything about all the world's aviation centers. This system was controlled by the UN, but the United States wanted to control the entire system. The Twin Towers had a large residence that could have remained standing even after the planes crashed, but they had actually secretly placed dynamite in both towers to make them collapse. He said seriously. Ken didn't know what to say. He was with the real person responsible for the 9/11 attacks. Morton. When the attack ended, I received a huge amount of money, numbers that neither you nor anyone else knows about. I was the richest man in the world. But what those damned Americans didn't tell me was that my son and wife were in one of the towers, and my son and wife died. My anger made me do something that made me end up here. He said seriously. Ken. What did you do? He said, looking at him. Morton. To destroy the United States defense system, which almost caused World War III, I sent all the nuclear bombs towards Russia, but Roberto prevented World War III, and so he sent me here, he said seriously. Ken was speechless. He couldn't believe what he had done. Bard. The army is finished. Go back to your dogs in heat. He said as he took Ken away with the prisoners. Some time later. Ken was seen in his cell again, but then the sound of his cell door opening could be heard. Ken saw Morton enter and sit on his stone bed. Ken. How did you get in without the guards noticing? He said, looking at him. Morton. I've been here for 20 years, do you think I don't know how the system works here? He said seriously. Ken. Right, and what are you doing here? He said while looking at him. Morton. I've decided you should join us. We have a plan, but we need a plan. He said seriously. Ken. He heard you, he said seriously. Chapter 4 Escape. 1 year later. Prison Level 8. A year had passed since Ken was sent to prison level 8. He had made a friendship with Morton and his colleague from there. This was called Amadeus, who was a very serious and cold person. He knew that he ended up in prison level 8 because he destroyed the defense system of the United States and Russia in order to dominate everything, But he was stopped by the Aztecs and ended up in this place. Thus, the three ended up forming an alliance to escape from prison level 8. Morden. Are you ready to escape? He said as Ken and Amadeus nodded. Morden. We'll carry out the plan during exercise. We have to be quick because the food truck is arriving today, which will cause the guards to temporarily disable the security system. We'll take advantage of that to escape through the tunnel. He said seriously. Ken. But how will we know when he arrives? He said while looking at him. Morden. I've been here 20 years. I know the truck arrives 1 hour early one week and 1 hour late the next. On holidays it arrives at dawn, and on Christmas Day it arrives at dusk. We'll take advantage of the fact that tomorrow it arrives at 2 p.m., which is the time it usually does. This will be our only chance. If we fail, we'll be executed. We can't fail. He said as Amadeus and Ken nodded. This is how they prepare to make their escape. The next day. Ken was seen at the gate during exercise time, where the prisoners were locked up to prevent them from escaping or moving around the prison. Ken was the only one allowed to walk around the prison during exercise time. Morden and Amadeus nod, and they discreetly push a prisoner who is lifting weights, causing him to hit another prisoner. Prisoner? Hey, what's wrong with you? He said while pushing the other prisoner, which caused a chain reaction of pushes. So all the prisoners start fighting while the guards watch from the roof. Aztec. Hey, stop fighting, I need reinforcements, he said as the footsteps of the guards could be heard approaching. Thus the door opens, revealing many Aztecs to stop the fight. Morden and Amadeus took advantage of this to leave, and Ken, who was hiding, closed the door, taking advantage of the fact that no one was watching the surroundings because they had gone to stop the fight. So they run and reach the darkest and least guarded cell where they enter and remove a sheet that hides a tunnel that Morden took 20 years to build without the guards and prisoners noticing. So they enter and begin to move through the tunnel where Morden stops them. Amadeus. What's wrong? He said seriously. Morden. The security system isn't off yet, the truck hasn't arrived yet, he said seriously while activating his senses to hear. He then hears a truck, the large door opening, and a machine sound. Morden. Now, he said as the three of them ran forward through the tunnel until they reached the prison parking lot where they saw the truck. Amadeus. We have to take advantage of the fact that the guards aren't watching the parking lot, he said, looking up and seeing that there were 4 guards watching up there and 2 at the entrance door. Amadeus. My turn, he said while taking out some skewers made of wood and a piece of bamboo. So he tries to shoot, but Ken stops him. Amadeus. What's wrong? He said, looking at him. Ken. If you kill them, you'll alert the suppliers, and that will attract the guards' attention, he said seriously. Morden. Right, you have a better idea, he said while the three of them thought of a plan. They couldn't use magic because it would alert the guards, and they had little time. Ken. I have a plan, but we need to be quick. He said while quickly explaining his plan. So the three of them nod and Ken leaves while the guards watch him. Aztec. Hey you, said a guard as the others followed him. So they approach and surround Ken. Aztec. You thought you could escape. She said as they forced her to the ground and began to handcuff her. Thus the Aztecs took her away, while a very small sound of the door closing was heard from the supplier's truck. The suppliers leave the building and get into their truck, and before leaving the Aztecs checked if they had anything, and they had nothing. The truck then departs, and once a great distance from 11-8 prison, Morden, Amadeus and Ken emerge from garbage bags. They waste no time and kill the suppliers. Morden. Hahaha, well done, Ken, he said as he parked in front of a sign, and Amadeus quickly got out and put up bushes to avoid attracting attention. Ken. Yes, the clone spell was a good plan, but it will only last 2 hours before the clone disappears, he said seriously. Amadeus. It worked the same way, he said as the three of them got into the truck. Amadeus. Yes, and even more so with my little blocking field to avoid triggering the alarm, he said seriously. Ken. And what will we do for now? He said while looking at them. Morden. We'll leave the truck here. We'll have to take a risk and escape through the desert. We'll be lucky if a car comes by and we can steal it. He said seriously. The three nod and begin to escape through the desert. Ken. Where exactly are we? He said as he ran. Amadeus. We're in the zone of silence in Sonora, Mexico. There's no internet here, no signal, not even compasses work. This is because Roberto put up a barrier to prevent escapes like this, he said as they ran through the desert. Then the three of them saw a car, and Morden, with his special eye, saw that it was an old man and noticed that he had some pornographic magazines. Morden. Ken, we need your help. He said as Ken nodded. So the car approached, but he saw 3 people on the ground looking for something, and he saw something that caught his attention. It was Ken who was wearing her prison skirt, and you could see a black thong that barely covered her vagina and anus. The old man stopped near them and got out. Old man. "Hey, what do you need?" he said while unable to avoid staring at Ken's butt. "Morden. My sister dropped her ring and we need help," he said while Ken pretended to look for something. "Ken, please help me, sir. Without that ring, I'm nothing. I'll do anything if you help us," he said while wiggling his butt, arousing the old man. "Old man. Of course, sweetheart," he said as he approached and discreetly touched Ken's butt. Once downstairs, Amadeus and Morden subdue him. "Old man. Hey, let me go," he said while trying to get both of them off him. Morden and Amadeus mercilessly break both of his arms, causing the old man to cry out in pain, and Ken approaches. "Morden. It's your decision, you kill him or we leave him alive," he said as Ken took out a pen he had taken from a supplier that Morden and Amadeus had killed. Ken began to remember how she was a hex bitch for the entire prison level 8. From being woken up by a guard's punch to being woken up with a penis in her mouth while having double anal and vaginal penetration. The dining hall was also her least favorite time of day, as she had to have hex with the prison cook in order to receive her daily meal. Even after finishing his meal, he was still hungry because the food he received was so little that some prisoners offered him extra food in exchange for hex. There were times when she had to accept because the prison cook was very cruel to her, as she only received scraps or very little food, so she had no choice but to accept. The guards were worse, as twice a week she was taken to a room, but upon entering she would see 60% or 70% of the guards, and an orgy would take place where she was the main star of the act. Many times I begged not to be raped by the prisoners and guards, but I only received cruel laughter from the prisoners and guards. There were even times when it became the prisoners' toilet, since once they finished having hex with her they would urinate on her, and in the end, Ken would be seen with traces of semen in her mouth, vagina and anus, and a lot of urine on her body, while the prisoners mocked her. Ken had tears in his eyes and was gripping the pen so tightly that without thinking twice, he lunged at the old man and began stabbing him repeatedly with the pen. The old man screamed and begged, but Ken didn't care and stabbed him in the eyes, lips, and mouth. Finally, Ken went to the car and Morden and Amadeus saw her open the trunk and she took out a somewhat rusty machete that the old man had in his car. Thus Ken mercilessly severed the old man's limbs, who screamed in pain and suffering, as the machete was not very sharp and it was hell for him. In the end, Ken stomped on his face with her heel until he died. In the end, Ken was seen with a large amount of blood on his arms and leg, along with some of the old man's brains. Amadeus and Morden smiled as Ken took her first step as an assassin. So the three of them get into the old man's car and leave the desert. Amadeus. "Look, surprise," he said while he was behind the car looking for valuables, but he saw many porn magazines, but he found a cooler with beers. Morden. "Great, pass one," he said while driving, and Amadeus gives him one. Amadeus gave Ken the same. Ken. "No thanks, I don't drink," he said while refusing the beer. Amadeus. "No thanks, I don't drink," he said, mimicking a woman's voice. Amadeus. "Come on, you need it. You killed someone who didn't deserve to live. You need this to relax and forget everything for a moment," he said as Ken took the beer. So Ken opens it and the moment he has it in his mouth he spits it out. Ken. "It tastes horrible," he said, but Morden slapped him. Morden. "Don't spill the beer, you're new to drinking this, it's normal for it to taste awful, it'll taste good later on," he said while Ken nodded and drank, but without spitting it out. Amadeus. "Don't focus on the bitterness, focus on the flavor," he said, while Ken struggled a bit but got used to the taste. Morden. "Well done, baby, however you like it. At first it will taste horrible, but you get used to it, just like wine and champagne," he said while drinking as they arrived at a town. Ken. "I understand, one question, is there any food in this car?" he said while Amadeus searched and shook his head. Amadeus. "Not only did this old man have beer and nothing else," he said while searching further and finding a lot of money, too much money. Amadeus. "Look," he said while taking out a lot of money but found a machine gun, a balaclava, a black sack and some jewelry. Ken. "Since this old man had a lot of money," he said while looking at him. Morden. "It's pretty certain he robbed a bank, but oh well, we need to find somewhere to eat," he said as the three of them arrived at a Mexican restaurant and ordered something. So the three of them ate while listening to the music in the place. Ken. "I don't understand the language here," he said while Morden touched his head where Ken gave him a slight headache, but then he began to understand the music. Ken. "What did you do?" he said, looking at him. Morden. "I gave you the ability to understand languages. Now you can speak and understand English, French, German, Argentinian, Chilean, Spanish, Italian, Portuguese, Polish, Russian, Chinese, Korean, Thai, Latin, Arabic, etc. The only difference is you can't understand ancient languages like Aztec, Egyptian, Mayan, Nomadic, etc." He said this while Ken understood. So they go out and drive while they have food for the night. 5 hours later. Ken, Morden, and Amadeus were on the road while Amadeus drove. Ken. And now what will we do? He said as he looked at them. Morden. First we'll go to the abandoned Pantheon in Tijuana. That's where my powers are, the ones I hid before the Aztecs captured me. Then we'll go to the Crow's prison to get some allies out of jail. He said as Ken nodded. Ken. What kind of allies? He said while looking at him. Morden. I'm talking about my right-hand man and his son, Alan O'Neill, Alan Jr., and many other allies who were sent there before Roberto could do anything. After that, we'll go to the women's prison in the Texas desert to free my second right-hand woman, Beatrice, and Abigail, the sisters of chaos and destruction, and my other allies. He said seriously. Amadeus. Once in the United States, we'll go to Australia to see my old laboratory where I have my daughter, Wider Baby, and many experiments. After that, we'll go to Saudi Arabia to search for my powers that I hid a long time ago. He said seriously. Morden. Afterwards, we'll train on an island where scrap metal is everywhere. It's an island where metal, copper, and weapons are abandoned. We'll train there long enough, then we'll go to Tartarus, the ninth circle of hell. There we'll find our best ally, someone even God feared, who allied himself with Zeus, Hades, Shiva, Poseidon, Odin, Aphrodite, Buddha, Arachi, and Nyx to stop him. He said seriously. Ken. Who are you talking about? He said while looking at him. Both. All for one, they said very seriously and without any spark of humor. Ken. Who is he? He said while looking at them. Morden. He is the most powerful being to ever walk this earth. He can give, but he can also take away. He said seriously. Amadeus. He was responsible for stripping several gods of their powers, such as Cosmo, the father of Zeus, Hades, Poseidon, and Adamas. Evil, the first god of evil. Joshua, the brother of Arachi. And other gods who no longer exist today. There are no records of their existence. Only those who knew them know who they were and how they died. He said seriously. Ken. Why did those gods erase them from existence? Didn't they stop all for one? I don't understand why they had to erase the records of those gods defeated by him. He said, looking at them. Morden. The gods did it because they didn't want anyone to know that a mere human surpassed them. Can you imagine if history book said that a human killed several gods and many others had to stop him? He said seriously. Amadeus. In my research, I had access to Arachi's library, but it was only for 5 minutes, enough to know that All for One exists and was imprisoned in the ninth circle of hell, along with the Olympian titans and other beings who caused harm in the world. I obtained this information before he was imprisoned and tortured by the Aztecs. He said seriously. Ken. I see, it will be difficult, but I won't give up until I have my revenge and kill those Gremory bitches, he said with hatred, since they were responsible for him being locked up in the level 8 prison and ruining his plans to ruin Issei's life. The three smiled and drove off towards their next destination. Elsewhere. Issei was seen training with Tanjiro when he felt a chill. Tanjiro. Are you alright? He said while looking at him. Issei. If nothing happens, he said with a smile. Issei. Thinking, what was that? I felt a strong urge to kill Ken, but why? He thought, confused. So they continued training without knowing what was coming next. 2 months later. After Ken, Morden, and Amadeus escaped from prison level 8, they were hunted by the entire Aztec faction. The three of them were seen in Tijuana in an unknown location, more specifically in an abandoned cemetery where nobody went anymore. Morden, Amadeus, and Ken walk towards an abandoned grave. Morden takes out a jug of water, soap, and a rag, and the three of them begin to clean. At the end, a white tomb with rustic details could be seen. Ken. Whose grave is this? He said while looking at it. Morden. It belongs to my beloved wife and my son, he said dejectedly. Morden removes a hidden lid from the tomb, and there was a piece of paper that had the rebel symbol on it. Morden begins to say a spell where the rebel symbol appears and a light enters the light surrounds Morden for a few seconds until he says. Morden. I'm back, he said as he saw that he had his powers back. Amadeus. Congratulations, he said while applauding Morden. Morden creates an energy ball and throws it at Ken, who screams in pain, but after a few seconds Ken is seen wearing a rebel soldier's uniform. Morden. Well, it seems I can't turn you back into a man since a god did this to you. He said while looking at him. Ken. Wait, you mean I can't be a man again? He said while looking at himself. Morden. No, but if we can kill that wretched Arachi, the spell could be broken. But I gave you a gift so you can enjoy Hexwell pleasure. He said this while Ken looked at his crotch, noticing that he now had a penis. Ken. That means I'm a futanari, he said while looking at his member. Amadeus. Yes, you could say that. Well, we have to go to the United States to go to my laboratory. He said as Morden made a magic circle where the three of them disappeared from the place. In the United States. A forest was seen on the outskirts of California where a magic circle appeared. Mordin, Amadeus, and Ken emerged and saw the place. Amadeus. Perfect, follow me. He said as he started walking. They walked for a while until they reached an abandoned place. It was a cave, but it looked very deteriorated, with vegetation already encroaching. There was a large metal door where Amadeus approached and began to search for something inside. Ken. What is this place? He said as he watched Amadeus find a hand scan. Amadeus. This is one of my secret laboratories. Here I created the zombie virus and controlled the mummy curse. The Aztecs thought I made it in a laboratory I had in Canada, but that was only 2% of the entire virus. He said as the large door opened. So they entered and the place looked to be in good condition, with a huge number of war robots, rebel armor, clones of Alan O'Neill and Mordin, and a large arsenal. Welcome Mr. Amadeus, said a voice. Ken. Incredible, he said while looking at the place. Amadeus. Follow me, he said as they walked. They arrive at Amadeus's office and he starts moving some things around. Mordin. What are you doing? He said while looking at him. Amadeus. I'm waking up my daughter, he said as a screen lowered showing a girl with white hair and a teddy bear. Daddy, is that you? She said while looking at him. Amadeus. That's right, daughter, your father is back. He said as the girl began to cry tears of joy. Daddy, I missed you so much, she said while crying tears of joy. Ken. Who is she? He said, confused. Amadeus. Excuse my manners, this is Wider baby, my daughter. She's in charge of looking after all my research, facilities, and computer viruses. He said while looking at his daughter with pride. Wider. It's a pleasure, he said as the screen rises and a hologram of Wider appears. Amadeus. Well, daughter, I want you to teleport the entire place to Junk Island. He said while looking at her. Wider. Yes, father, he said as he disappeared. Activating mass teleportation in 3, 2, 1, he said as everything moved for a few seconds and everything was in another place. Teleportation complete, he said as Wider appeared. Wider. Ready, Dad, he said with a smile. Ken. Where are we? He said as Wider turned on a screen, seeing that it was an island where there was only scrap metal and waste metal. Mordin. This island is used by all the world's military governments to dump their failures or useless metals. The United States, Russia, and China use it to leave their old weapons and tanks that are no longer functional. He said this while Ken was impressed by all the metal there. Ken. Incredible, he said, looking at rusty, abandoned tanks, and also the odd unused weapon. Amadeus. Well, daughter, activate the robots to clear the area and begin creating more soldiers and tanks. He said while looking at her. Wider. Yes, father, he said as all the robots were seen being activated and they all left the laboratory towards the island. Amadeus. Well, Wider, we're going to Saudi Arabia to recover my powers. I'm leaving you in charge. He said while looking at her. Wider. Of course, father, she said while trying to hug him, but she couldn't because he was a hologram, making her sad. Amadeus. Don't worry, daughter, once I have my powers I'll make you a body especially for you, he said as she became excited. Amadeus. Mordin, please, he said as Mordin teleported with Ken and Amadeus to Saudi Arabia. In Arabia. The desert was visible where a magic circle appeared and these people walked through the heat. Ken. It's so hot, he said as he walked. Mordin. You'll get used to it, he said as they walked. They arrive at a town where the three of them walk and reach an abandoned place. Amadeus. Well, here it is, he said as he knocked down the door and the three of them entered. Ken. This is where you hid your powers, he said while looking around the dark place. Amadeus. That's right. Before the Aztecs captured me, I hid my powers here. He said while finding a sphere. Amadeus takes the crystal sphere and breaks it, letting in lights. Amadeus. Incredible, he said as he saw his powers return. Amadeus summons a sphere of energy and throws it towards Ken, who screams in pain for a few moments but recovers. Ken. What's wrong? He said, but it feels strange. Amadeus. I gave you some abilities, you'll see when we get there, he said as Ken nodded. Mordin tried to teleport back to the island, but Amadeus stopped him. Amadeus. Wait, before we leave again, take me to Russia to find a woman. He said as Mordin agreed, confused. In Russia. The capital of Moscow was visible. Mordin, Ken, and Amadeus appeared in an alley. Amadeus. Okay, wait here. He said as they both nodded and Amadeus left. 2 hours later. Mordin and Ken were seen playing dominoes that Ken had in his bag and then they both saw Amadeus arrive with a large bag. Amadeus. Sorry for the delay, let's go. He said while Mordin asked. Ken was going to ask, but he saw the bag and understood. On the island. Ken, Mordin, and Amadeus were seen arriving on the island. Wider. "Welcome, father," he said as he appeared in front of the three. Amadeus. "Thank you, daughter. Well, get ready, because from today on you will have a physical body," he said as Wider became excited. "Ken. How will he do that if I may ask?" he said as Amadeus opened the bag, revealing a dead albino woman with her throat cut. Amadeus. "I'll use that woman's body so Wider can use it," he said as he went to his computer where Wider disappeared and a chip came out of the computer. Amadeus. "You can watch what I'm going to do if you want," he said, while both of them, having nothing else to do, nodded and followed him. Morden and Ken helped bring the dead woman to a surgical facility. Amadeus. "Put the woman on the table and put on protection for this," he said as they both changed for surgery, as did Amadeus. Thus they began to be Amadeus's assistants. 3 hours later. The woman's body was seen open, and Amadeus took the chip that contained Wider's memory and life and placed it in the woman's heart. Amadeus carefully opens the woman's heart and places the chip inside. Morden began to close the heart wound, and Ken helped by passing along the materials they needed. Amadeus and Morden finished the surgery, and Amadeus put some wires in the woman's body. Amadeus. "Okay, back off," he said as he flipped an electrical outlet. The woman's body moved for a few seconds, but in the end, she stopped moving. Amadeus removed the wires and took the woman's pulse. He checked her for 5 minutes and thought his plan had failed, but then the woman's body began to move. Ken. "Great," he said as he watched the woman move slowly. Where am I?" he said while looking little by little. "Dad," he said as he regained his sight and saw Amadeus. Amadeus. "That's right, Wider," he said as Wider, now in a human body, began to hug Amadeus with tears of happiness. Wider. "But how?" he said while looking at her body from head to toe. Morden. "I wonder that too," he said, looking at Amadeus. Amadeus. "Well, you see, when we went to Russia I searched everywhere for a perfect body for Wider until I found this woman. I followed her and, well, I killed her, and now her body is hers," he said as Wider tried to walk but fell to the ground where Ken helped her. Amadeus. "Relax, daughter, you're just getting used to it," he said as Wider was being helped by Ken. Wider. "Yes, father," she said while Ken was carrying her. Morden. "Well, we need to rest. Tomorrow will be a busy day and I'm tired," he said as Amadeus took Ken and Morden to some rooms to rest. In prison level 8. The guards were seen kneeling while Roberto had a very unfriendly face. Roberto. "How was it possible that Ken, Morden and Amadeus escaped?" he said as the guard sweated profusely. Guard. "Mr. Roberto, we saw the cameras and you had been planning this for months," he said while waiting to calm Roberto down, but Roberto stepped on his head. Roberto. "If that's the case, then why the hell didn't they separate Ken from Amadeus and Morden, or why didn't they destroy those plans, or better yet, why didn't they check the cameras to see what they were doing?" he said as Roberto kicked the guard, sending him flying into the wall. The guards knew they had screwed up badly by allowing Ken, Morden, and Amadeus to escape. Roberto. "From today onwards, everyone is fired as a guard at prison level 8, 25% of their fortune will be taken away, and they will be demoted to low-class Aztecs," he said while the guards begged, but they were taken away by the Aztecs. Roberto. "Israel is sending a message that Ken, Morden, and Amadeus are wanted with a hefty reward, dead or alive," he said as Israel nodded. Roberto. "The factions need to know this. If Ken escaped, I can't imagine him forming an alliance with Musin." He said this while Musin sent a message to arrange a meeting. 1 year later. After Ken, Morden, and Amadeus escaped, they were hunted by the entire Supernatural Alliance. Wanted. Ken Hyoudou. Reward. $100 million in gold coins. Wanted dead or alive, each coin worth $10,000. Donald Morden. Reward. $75 million in gold coins. Wanted, dead or alive. Manfred Amadeus. Reward. $80 million in gold coins. Wanted, dead or alive. After the reward was announced, many went looking for Ken, Morden, and Amadeus. They were wanted all over the world, but the few who found the island were killed by Morden and Amadeus. Ken and Wider couldn't help much because they barely practiced their powers. Morden and Amadeus forbade them from fighting because they weren't ready yet. Amadeus created a device that erased the island from the map and no supernatural being could see it except for Issei, Volley, Office, Great Red, and Roberto. But they were busy training and couldn't be found at the moment. During that time, Ken and Wider trained relentlessly, gaining various powers courtesy of Morden and Amadeus. Ken's Poters. The summon bladed weapons. Morden gave him this power, and he can summon anything from knives to katanas. You can summon any bladed weapon you want, which can even affect supernatural beings. Summon firearms. You can summon anything from pistols to machine guns, even heavy weapons like bazookas, rocket launchers, or mini-buns. Morden gave him this power. At first he could barely summon pistols and knives, but over time he was able to summon powerful weapons. Summon clothes. This can summon any clothing he imagined, from suits and costumes. Morden gave him this power to make him stealthy. Learn languages. Morden gave him this power once they left prison level 8. This device can understand any language just by hearing it, from Latin to Chinese and Arabic. These are the powers Morden gave Ken. Now let's move on to the powers Amadeus gave him. Summon combat robots. He can summon robots to help him fight his enemies, such as Amadeus's defense robots, Morden robots, and Alan robots. Fire and ice powers. This one can use both ice and fire powers, and by combining both attacks, they create a steam attack that greatly damages his enemies. Ken was now very strong, matching Issei in his queen armor that he used against Serekh. Wider was not left behind either, as he also obtained powers from Morden and Amadeus. Wider also had the same powers as Ken, the only difference being that she couldn't use ice or fire powers, but she did have access to all of Amadeus's weaponry. Now the four of them were ready to begin their plan. Morden. Okay, are you ready? He said while summoning an assault machine gun. Amadeus. Yes, he said while behind him was a large number of combat robots. Wider. I'm ready, she said while on a flying platform with combat drones above her. Ken. I'm ready, he said while his left arm was covered in fire and his right arm in ice. So Morden created a portal and everyone disappeared. Crow's prison. On an island far from the United States was one of the most brutal prisons in the world. This prison was called the Raven Prison. Why was it called that? Well, the island is inhabited by an incredible number of crows whose calls could be heard 20 hours a day. More than one prisoner went mad from the sound, and others ended up committing suicide, but suicide was difficult because the guards kept a very close watch on them. Outside the crow's prison, a magic circle appeared from which Morden, Amadeus, Wither, and Ken emerged. Morden. Okay, Wider, hack the prison's defense systems. Ken, you do the honors. He said as Wider began destroying the security cameras and motion detectors. Ken summons a bazooka and fires at the door, destroying it. The guards watching the gate flew out, and this alerted the other guards. They started shooting at the intruders, but Amadeus's robots fired back at them, and Alan robots acted as shields, firing at the guards. They began to enter the prison where they destroyed the guards' defenses. They arrive at the cells where Ken destroys the door, and the prisoners are demanding freedom and that they be released. Morden saw some of his followers and freed them, where they helped Morden free his own followers. Morden arrived at a huge cell covered by a metal door, and he effortlessly broke it down. Upon entering, he saw Alan O'Neill with chains all over his body. Morden approaches him and breaks his chains. Alan. Mr. Morden, I knew that one day I would be free. He said while stretching his body. Morden. I see you're still in good shape. Well, we need to get out of here. He said as they started to leave, where they saw all the guards who were watching over the place dead and Morden's followers. Morden. Well, we have to go, but before we do, he said while summoning a bomb and slamming it into the ground. Thus they left, abandoning the prisoners to their fate, with the exception of Morden's followers, who took them to the island. The island where the prison was located was visible, but then an explosion occurred in the prison, destroying the entire island to pieces. Both the prisoners and the guards died in the explosion, as did the crows that inhabited the place. On the island, Morden, Amadeus, Wider, Ken, Alan, and Morden's followers were seen. Morden. Good job, we did well. He said while looking at Alan and his followers. Morden. Alright soldiers, today was a victory, but tomorrow morning you will launch a new attack on the Phantom Prison, where we will free Commanders Abigail and Beatrice. He said as the soldiers replied, yes sir. Amadeus. Okay, go take a bath and put on new clothes. Your commander Ken will give you instructions. He said as everyone followed Ken. Some time later. The four of them were seen in Amadeus's office, while Alan and Morden's followers rested. Amadeus. Well, this is the plan. Wither, you, Alan, and Morden's followers will attack the Phantom Prison. Morden, Ken, and I will go to the 9th Circle of Hell to free All for One and other beings who can help us. He said as Wither agreed. Morden. Well, we need to rest because we'll be attacking first thing in the morning. He said as they agreed. The next day. Morden's followers were seen wearing their characteristic rebel army uniforms. Morden had already given Alan instructions on what they would do, which he accepted. So Morden made a magic circle and they disappeared from the place. Then Tartarus. Tartarus was visible, where Morden, Amadeus, and Ken emerged and began to walk. Amadeus. We have to advance until we reach the gates of the infernal circles, he said seriously. Morden. We have to be discreet so as not to attract attention and have Hades not come to arrest us, he said as the three nodded. Amadeus used his powers and became invisible along with Morden and Amadeus. Thus they advanced, evading Hades's guards and the demons who watched over the place. Thus they advanced where they saw sinners in cells and other tortured beings, but that mattered little to them. So they came to a large door, which they opened and entered. They arrived but dodged a bite where they saw Hades's dog which guarded 9 gates. The dog lunged at them, but Ken shot at it. The dog didn't back down and lunged at Ken. Morden moved with great speed and made deep cuts on the dog, who cried out in pain. Amadeus created a large ball of energy and launched it towards Hades's dog, which, upon being touched by the energy ball, exploded, sending it flying and injuring it. Hades's dog fell unconscious, which Morden, Ken, and Amadeus took advantage of. Amadeus. We must take advantage of this to enter the 9th circle of hell, he said seriously. So they open the door with the number 9 and enter before the dog wakes up. They saw darkness where no one else could see anything until the light came on, revealing many cells. They walked on to where they saw a guy with green hair hugging a beautiful girl with white hair and green tips. Ken looked at her lustfully, but the guy gave him a murderous glare that Ken ignored. They saw many prisoners who had committed unforgivable sins, which led to their being there. They arrived at a specific cell that said all for one. So they broke into the cell and to their surprise it wasn't all for one, but a guy dressed as Michael Jackson. Amadeus. Who are you? You're not all for one, he said while looking at him. Wow, it's been a long time since I've had visitors. No, I'm not all for one, I'm just Musen Kibutsuji. It's a pleasure. He said politely as he invited them into his cell, and since he didn't see him as a threat, they entered. Musen summons a teacup, a table, cups, and some cookies and invites them in. Musen. Go ahead, it's not poisoned, I promise. He said while taking a sip of his tea. Morden. Where is all for one? He said while looking at him. Musen. Yes, I remember him. I killed him 200 years ago and ate him. He said while looking at them. That caused surprise among them, wherever it continued. Musen. By eating it, I gained his powers. Basically, I have his powers and his knowledge. He said seriously. Amadeus. I see, well so all for one no longer exists, he said seriously. Musen. When I arrived here, Hades sent me here and told me that for someone to be erased from existence, they must be killed here. He said seriously. The 3 of them now understood that all for one no longer existed, so they needed another plan. Morden. I understand. Well, we have a deal for you. Join us and we'll get you out of this place. He said while looking at him. Musen. What would I gain besides getting out of here? He said while looking at him. Morden. You will dominate everything like all for one, Adolf Hitler, Napoleon, and others once did, he said seriously. Musen wasn't stupid. This was his ticket out, and like a silver platter, he would have everyone at his feet, just as he had once dreamed. And finally, he could do something to control the sunlight. Musen. I accept, he said as the 3 of them smiled. Musen. But my allies will come with me. He said as he looked at them. Amadeus. Deal, he said as they left the cell. Thus Musen breaks down the doors where everyone comes out and kneels before Musen. Musen. Listen everyone, we're coming back again and this time we'll do things right. I'm not one to admit mistakes, but I can say I was wrong, so this time we'll have everything perfect, just like it should have been. He said as everyone screamed with excitement. Musen saw a cell where he approached and saw his most loyal former ally. Musen. Akaza, let's go. He said while Akaza just stared at the wall. Akaza. If you're going to kill, do it yourself. I'm not going to fight. He said while looking at the wall. Musen. You don't want to be stronger, you didn't want to become stronger and stronger, he said while looking at him seriously. Akaza. What good is becoming stronger and stronger if I have no one to protect? I want to pay for all my sins until I can see my beloved again. He said seriously while looking at the wall. Musen. You're going to help me one way or another. He said as he approached at great speed and buried his hand in his face. Akaza. I won't allow it. He said as he punched him, making him stumble back. Akaza. In these hundreds of years I trained so as not to be your damn puppet, he said as the wound on his face regenerated. Musen. Idiot, I absorbed all for one, so the moment I put my arm to your face, you've already lost. He said as Akaza screamed in pain, blood pouring from his eyes and mouth. Musen. Mind control. From today on, you will be my slave. You will do everything I say, and you will eat and kill both men and women. He said as Akaza's eyes lost their light. Akaza. Thinking, I'm sorry Koyuki, master and dad, I failed you again. He said, shedding a few tears and accepting his fate of being Musen's slave once more. Before falling under Musen's control, Akaza had a flashback to his beloved, remembering her beauty, her smile, and her beautiful eyes. In the sky, one could see the soul of someone who only said, beloved fiancé, she said while touching her chest, having a bad feeling. In hell. Akaza was seen on the ground where he stood up. Akaza. My lord, I will follow you to hell and back. I swear my complete loyalty to you. He said with empty eyes. Muzan. Welcome, Akaza, he said as they left. Muzan saw his moons both upper and waning. Muzan decided to do the same thing he did with Akaza on the waning moon 5, where he erased his memories and made him loyal to Muzan, erasing the thought of a family. Thus they all leave hell where, upon seeing the door, Mordin, Ken and Amadeus open it, seeing Hades' dog glaring at them furiously. Mordin. He looks annoyed, he said as Hades' dog lunged at all the prisoners. Before Hades' dog could do anything, Muzan killed it with a single blow, surprising everyone. Muzan. You're welcome. Let's get out of here before Hades comes. He said as the three nodded. Thus Mordin told them where the exit was, where they all followed him, and both Muzan and his moons killed the Tartar guards. His non-demon allies also helped by killing the guards with their weapons, courtesy of Ken. Thus they arrived where they had appeared, and Mordin made a magic circle where they all disappeared. The world was in danger again now that the Demon King was free, and worse, he had the powers of All for One. Will this be the end of humanity, or will our heroes be able to overcome this threat? Mordin's allies. Well, this isn't a chapter, it's a summary of Mordin's allies, and I'll also make a list of Amadeus's and Muzan's allies. I will also make a list of the allies of those who will fight against Ken and his allies. Okay, let's begin. Alan O'Neill. This soldier is known as Alan the Immortal because no matter how many times he is killed, he always returns. He was able to conquer Australia single-handedly without any help because no matter how many times he was killed, he always returned. When he was captured, he was given a life sentence because they couldn't kill him. They tried beheading him, electrocuting him, giving him a lethal injection, and many other methods, but they couldn't kill him because he always came back. They even said it was Rasputin's son who they tried to kill, but it was impossible to do so. Thus he was sent to the Crow's prison where he was chained up so that he could not escape. Alan Jr. This is Alan's son, who is just like his father. Despite being killed, he returns, but unlike his father, when he is killed, he gets up and fights hand to hand. He also throws a large number of grenades and can heal himself without problems. He has the same attitude as his father. Julia O'Neill. She is Alan's youngest daughter, who is not like her father and brother. Instead, she fights from a distance. She has great strength in her arms, which she uses to throw grenades up to a kilometer away. Abigail. If Alan O'Neill is Mordin's right-hand man, then Abigail is undoubtedly Mordin's left-hand woman. She is a very strong girl who, along with her sister, was able to easily subdue the countries of Belgium and the Netherlands. She is deeply in love with Gasper, as she has an obsession with a little vampire. She was a shy girl, just like her sister, but they met the vampire Gasper, who was hated for his power. Thus the three became friends, but due to circumstances beyond their control, they had to separate. Eventually, they joined Mordin's army where they trained hard to become strong. Note. Trevor doesn't exist in this story, so I used Gasper to make it more interesting. Beatrice. She is the general in charge of the high command of Mordin's army. She is so arrogant that she treats her guards like trash. She only listens to her sister and Gasper, whom she sees as her best friend. She loves apples. If you give her one, her bad mood disappears. Never try to give him carrots, as he hates them, and if you give him one, it will be the end of you. She harbors incestuous feelings towards her sister, but does not show them except silently. Ian. He is Abigail's right-hand man, who possesses great skill with his military sword. His only weapons are his sword and his revolver. Many underestimate him, but he alone killed 500 French soldiers while serving with Mordin. He's a quiet person, but he gets along well with Alan and Abigail. Nova. She is Beatrice's right-hand woman, who fell into a coma due to a strange illness. Her parents, who were soldiers, begged Mordin for help for their daughter. Mordin scientists worked on her, turning her into an android with great strength and skill in battle. She is Beatrice's best friend, the only one who can calm her down, besides her sister, of course. Kriemhild. She is a commander in the rebel army, and she was responsible for bombing both Koreas. She likes heights, so she doesn't use a plane or helicopter, but her own propeller. She doesn't get along well with Beatrice and Abigail, but she's Julia's best friend, and Julia considers her best friend as well. Naomi. She controls Mordin's entire arsenal of weapons, which she alone caused many problems for Japan and Vietnam. She's very bitter but very flirtatious with Mordin, who has tried to be her partner, but he ignores her. Emma. She is a scientist, but she is also a soldier who uses her experiments as weapons. She is the brains behind Mordin, along with other scientists. This science-obsessed woman is very quiet. She was responsible for turning Nova back into an android, and they get along well. Although of course it's very rare for her to talk to other people since she's always busy. Romy. She is Naomi's right-hand woman and best friend. She likes guns and machine guns. He was responsible for committing genocide in Thailand and India, where he mercilessly used his machine guns and killed anyone who crossed his path. She likes weapons and having tea with the others. Catalina. She is Emma's lab rat, whom she uses for her experiments, but she is not cruel to her. She is very shy and gets along very well with Emma and Nova. Her best friend is Emma, who, despite being used for her experiments, gets along very well with her. Isabella. She trains all the rebel soldiers and is very demanding. He does not tolerate mistakes. There have been times when he has accidentally killed a soldier by whipping him. She gets along very well with Naomi and is Alan's wife and stepmother to Alan Jr. and Julia, who hates her for being so bitter. Dolores. She loves the cold that swims in frozen ice. He was responsible for causing a snowstorm in the United States and Canada. Although it didn't kill anyone, it left both countries snowing. She gets along well with Abigail and Beatrice. She likes ice cream and very cold drinks. Those would all be Morden's important allies. He also has his soldiers as allies, but they are not as important as they are. You might wonder why he has female generals instead of more men. Well, that's because when he was arrested, his commanders had all been killed except for Alan, Alan Jr., and Diane. Amadeus's allies. These are Amadeus's allies. Wider Baby. She is undoubtedly Amadeus's right-hand woman, possessing full access to all of Amadeus's weaponry. She was created by Amadeus for the purpose of destroying the world's defense system and also unleashing the curse of the mummies and the zombie virus. She is serious with everyone except Amadeus, Morden, and Ken. With her father's help, she gained a body that allows her to fight and be a normal girl. She has a relationship with Ken, and they are known as the couple from hell because they make their opponents suffer. Alice. She is a creation of Amadeus who has access to all of Amadeus's heavy weapons, such as tanks, missiles, and nuclear weapons. She is Wider's best friend, and both of them are in relationships with Ken, who was able to build his own harem. She likes sweets and using Amadeus's weaponry. She also had a body thanks to Amadeus, who killed a woman from Poland and used her body so that Alice could be human. Heart. She is also a creation of Amadeus who likes to use melee attack weapons. She can use many melee weapons, and with her weapons, she is capable of taking on the entire German army. She likes meat and potatoes, which is her favorite food. She has a relationship with Ken, as do Wider and Alice. Amadeus killed a German woman so that Heart could become human. Perch. She is an android built by Amadeus, who used a Canadian woman who drowned to create Perch. She loves weapons that can cut through anything. His favorite weapon is a minigun whose bullets can pierce powerful armor and destroy heroes' katanas with one shot. To protect itself from its enemies, it creates an electric field that kills anyone who gets close. She's in a relationship with Ken and is Ami's best friend. V. She is also an android created by Amadeus, who used a Spanish woman who died in a car accident and used her body to create Ami. She and Perch are best friends. She likes sniper rifles, and her main enemy is Hyoudou. She is Ken's partner, who, as I mentioned, has a harem thanks to Amadeus. She likes strawberries and cream and paella. Bilala. She is an android created by Amadeus, who used a Korean girl who committed suicide due to social stress. She likes bazookas and missiles and gets along very well with Perch and Ami. Her best friend is Heart, who also gets along well with her. Karen. She is Amadeus's assistant, and she used to be his right-hand woman before Wider took her place. She possesses great intelligence, and she and Emma are scientists for Amadeus and Morden. She doesn't talk much and hates Wider for taking her place as Amadeus's right-hand woman. Victory. She is a very important soldier of Amadeus who uses her pistol and her bird. She can create fire tornadoes and hates Rentero's girlfriends because she can't feel anything for men. She wants to kill Rentero's girlfriends so that she can make him fall in love with her. Undo. She is an android created by Amadeus, who used a French girl's body to create Undo. She gets along very well with Akaza, and when they fight together they are called the symbol of Korea because they protect each other. She has no feelings for Ken and is best friends with Akaza, who for some reason felt a chill because he felt someone was looking at him jealously, and it wasn't Ken. Iron. She is a creation made by Amadeus, who used an English girl for Iron to use her body. She may seem like a harmless girl, but in reality, she really likes heavy weapons, especially weapons of mass destruction. She possesses weapons of destruction that could easily destroy entire countries. She's in a relationship with Ken. Sweet baby. She could be considered Wider's younger sister, born from Amadeus's technology. Amadeus was surprised when he discovered her like this. He looked for a body for her and found an Italian woman whom he killed and used her body for Sweet to use. She likes anime, video games, and bears. His weapons are based on them and he uses bear-shaped robots. She's in a relationship with Ken. She hates Issei and Rentaro's harem for a reason from a long time ago. Bunny. She is a soldier of Amadeus who loves rabbits. She likes carrots and gets along very badly with Beatrice because of this. She gets along very well with Sweet. They are best friends. He hates animal hunters who, when they find one, do not hesitate to torture it before killing it. She is a vegetarian. Clarice. She is, so to speak, a failed experiment of the US government. Before she was killed, she was saved by Amadeus, who hid her from the government. When I returned, it was for her, and without hesitation, I accepted to be part of Amadeus's army. To the surprise of many, she is in a relationship and it's not with Ken. It's with someone who will be revealed later. She can use black holes that absorb anything. Little lady. She is a creation of Amadeus, who used a woman from Norway who was murdered by Amadeus and whose body he used for little to inhabit. She is very aggressive with her opponents and doesn't hesitate to fight. She fights like Akaza, who gets along very well with him. She hates Dauma and Ken because they both see her as a piece of meat. She and Akaza fight very often for entertainment. Well, they are Amadeus's allies, as are many of the robots he has. They wonder why Amadeus has no male soldiers or generals. Well, this is because his soldiers, like the generals, were killed by the Aztecs. None survived, just like Morden, with only Alan Jr., and Diane surviving. Muzin's allies Part 1. These are the allies of Muzin that he had in Tartarus in the 9th Circle of Hell. Hi Guy. Waning Moon 6. This used to be the Waning Moon 6, which can use any house and can move the house at will. He became very strong when he arrived in Hell. He had to become strong where he could now control up to 5 houses at will. Hamanu. Waning Moon 6. This demon is weaker than Kaigai because he has the ability to summon crosses that explode. The bad thing about this demon is that he is too lazy and cowardly to admit that he is afraid when he sees a pillar. Another disadvantage is that it can only summon one explosive cross, since in order to summon another, it has to eat a human. Mukago. Waning Moon 5. She used to be the Waning number 4, but her position was taken away from her. She can turn her fingers into claws that can break a hunter's katana with ease. Her problem is that when she doesn't have the strength to keep fighting, she uses her body as bait to be shown mercy. Many fell into this trap and had relations with her, where in the end they died because their throats were cut. She is a coward because she runs away when she sees a pillar and knows there is no way she can defeat it. Wakiraba. Waning Moon 4. This demon is different from the previous 3. Unlike the others, this one allows himself to be hurt because when his enemy touches or smells his blood, it's like poison to his enemies. His special technique is that he has super speed and his blood makes him a formidable opponent. Do not underestimate this demon, for he does not flee like the previous 2 demons, for he knows his advantage in battle. Bakuro. Waning Moon 3. This is a manipulative demon because he enjoys raping women before killing them. This one can summon deadly snakes that ensnare his opponent and destroy their bones. This demon loves killing women more than men because before killing them, he loves to grape them until they beg for more and more. Hyro. Waning Moon 2. This demon is like Akaza, a lover of fights. This can summon wolf spirits that explode upon touching their enemy. He hates drunks because a long time ago a drunken hunter found him before he was a moon and tortured him until he got tired. That left him with a huge grudge and every time he sees someone drunk, he doesn't hesitate to kill them. He loves playing Russian roulette but with a fully loaded gun where he shoots himself in the head every day. Benmu. Waning Moon 1. This moon loves to make its opponent suffer through sleep. He puts his opponents to sleep until he destroys their soul and tortures them. This demon is difficult to kill because it is fused with a train, making it hard to find its head. He is a lover of the suffering of others who does not hesitate to torture anyone who approaches his territory. Rui. Waning Moon 1. Note. By forgetting to look for a family thanks to Muzin, he has more power since he is not divided with anyone. This demon doesn't let anyone into his territory. This creature massacres anyone who approaches and can create traps made of spider webs. Unlike Enmu, this one shows mercy to those who approach him with siblings or family because even though he doesn't remember his past life, he still has compassion for them. She gets along very well with Yubyum, whom she sees as her adoptive mother. Yubyum. Waning Moon 1. This demon likes to eat children. She lures them with a song until they reach a building and then she eats them. He gets along very well with Rui, who sees him as his adopted son. They are both in the same place and they are both fighting together. Note. Emu, Rui, and Yubyum share the Waning Moon 1 spot since none of the 3 can surpass a higher moon except for Yubyum, who can put up a fight against Daki. Daki. Upper Moon 6. This demon surpasses the powers of Emu, Rui, and Yubyum. She can wear girdles that she can control as she pleases. She loves beauty and detests ugliness. She cares about herself and also about her brother Hyoudou. She can use her girdles as communicators to know everything around her. It is the weakest upper moon since everyone can defeat it, but it can put up a serious fight against inexperienced warriors. Hyoudou. Upper moon 6. This demon is much stronger than his sister. He can use blood sickles that he can manipulate at will. She has great skill in battle and does not hesitate to attack anyone who dares to hurt her sister. He doesn't like it when anyone has a better life than him. Diako. Upper moon 5. This demon is a lover of murky art. He can use vessels that can summon fish to help him fight. When he is at a disadvantage, he uses his diamond transformation, which allows him to fight hand to hand and turns everything he touches into fish. He's a demon who doesn't like to be surpassed by anyone in art. Antengu. Upper moon 4. This demon is a coward who doesn't like to fight face to face. When this is cut, it creates clones that are its emotions fighting for it. They will take care of fighting while he hides until the battle is over. He doesn't admit his guilt and he doesn't like being called a liar. Nakam. Upper moon 4. This demon has the most broken ability of all. He can create an infinite castle dimension, which makes him the demon with the strongest technique in both area and form. She can teleport anyone just by playing her instrument. He hates Dauma for many reasons. Bakaza. Upper moon 3. He is one of the strongest demons that Muzin has. He is a fight lover who doesn't hesitate to fight for fun. He gets along very well with Unwanted, where they both fight together as Daki and Hyoudou. He eats both women and men, but it's very rare for him to eat women since he sees women and has no reason to kill them, so he doesn't. If he sees women trying to attack him, then he kills them. Unwanted and Akaza got along very well, but for some reason Akaza felt a chill and didn't know why, because when Unwanted was very close to Akaza, he saw in the darkness eyes that looked at him with anger and jealousy. Dauma. Upper moon 2. This demon is a lover of women. He eats women by the dozens and is the most hated by both hunters and his own companions. Dauma is a demon who absolutely hates being told that he feels nothing for anyone. He has tried to win over both Daki and Nakam, but it has proven impossible. Kagaku. Upper moon 2. This demon is very arrogant. He can use lightning breathing in conjunction with his blood technique. He was previously defeated by Zenitsu, but in hell he trained hard until he achieved the position of Upper moon 2. His objective is to seek out Zenitsu's descendants or their replacements in order to kill them. Akeno hates Kagaku. Hakushibo. Upper moon 1. He is undoubtedly Muzin's most powerful demon. He can use a breathing technique that no one knows or understands. In hell he trained alongside Kagaku, where they both gained more power. Both can now be killed by decapitation, making it more difficult to kill them. Hakushibo doesn't like to see anyone surpass him and hates solar breathing, which he cannot tolerate. This demon is the one who most seeks the descendants of solar breathing. Okay, those are Muzin's demons. Now let's move on to his human allies, but that will be in part 2. Muzin's allies part 2. These are Muzin's allies from hell, but they are human. Lin Loud Padre. This man was sent to hell after murdering his son Lincoln Loud in cold blood, using his flesh to feed himself and his family. This man is considered the worst father in history because he not only ate his son, but also allowed his daughters to torture him and do other terrible things to him. Muzin liked Lin Sr., who allowed him to join his ranks and turned him into a demon who can now eat human flesh without problems. He gets along very well with Kakushibo, who taught him moon breathing, and they fight together. Lin Sr. is Upper Moon 1 along with Kakushibo. Read aloud. She is the wife of Lin Sr., who, if he is the worst father in history, is the worst mother. This woman let her daughters do whatever they wanted with her daughter and did nothing to stop them. She had an abortion because she hexily abused her own son until she became pregnant. She had to have an abortion before her husband found out. Muzin recruited her because of her sadism and potential. She can use a scent that hypnotizes men and they have hex with her until she mercilessly kills them. She is Upper Moon 2 along with Dauma. Lori Loud. She's a bitch who likes DP. She tortured and raped her own brother because she believed she was unlucky. She beat her brother mercilessly until she broke his golf club. She abused him because her boyfriend didn't want to have hex with her that day. So he couldn't think of a better idea than to abuse his brother. When her boyfriend found out about this, he decided to have a threesome with his girlfriend and him. So the poor man had to have relations against his will with his sister and her boyfriend. Muzin liked the authority she had, so he recruited her when he met her in hell. She gets along very well with Kagaku, and they fight together. She can use a breathing technique called ice breath, which allows her to create ice with her breath. Lini Loud. She was the one who abused her brother the most. She didn't hit him, but she did abuse him every day. It was so bad that she had to have 4 abortions. She made deals with her brother, having sex with him in exchange for food or something else he wanted. Muzin saw how innocent she was and how deceitful she could be, so he made her his ally. She gets along very well with Hantengu, especially since she's become a nymphomaniac and enjoys nights with him and his clones, particularly Zhakutin. She can use the elements of wind, air, fire and water and can clone herself 4 times, but the disadvantage is that both she and her clones lose power as they split. Lula loud why Sam sharp. She is a rock lover. She beat up her brother with the help of his girlfriend Sam. Both of them hit him with their electric guitars until they broke them on his back. It was a minimum of 1 guitar per day. Both of them, in a drunken stupor, wanted to experience what it felt like to have sex with a man, and their brother was the perfect person for that. Both of them abused him to the point of doing so for several hours. They both loved seeing that child cry and beg, so they abused him several times. Upon seeing both of them sadistic in the face of child suffering, Muzin decided to bring them into his ranks. Rui and Yubum don't like each other very much. Both get along very well with Enmu, and they team up to kill people, especially children. Both can produce a song that puts their opponents to sleep and also a scream that destroys eardrums and bones. Blue and loud. She is a psychopath who was one of the causes of her brother suffering from a horrible itch. She used her brother as a guinea pig for her pranks. From making him into a Chinese dogfish to hitting him with cement pies. She smashed his face several times thanks to those pies. It was a miracle he didn't die from a stroke. One day she saw her boyfriend and her best friend kissing, which confronted them, and they said they loved each other. Her boyfriend told her that he no longer saw her as beautiful, but his friend did. Filled with rage and feeling horrible, she decided to grape her brother and force him to say nice things to her while they did it. She loved doing this, especially since she received compliments from him. So she abused him very often, but she also made him deals he couldn't refuse. It was either have sex with her or endure her jokes. So his brother decided to accept the first option, which was so frequent that he had to have an operation to perform an abortion. Muzin loved her personality, so he recruited her into his ranks because of how psychopathic she could be. He gets along very well with Kagaku, who has a relationship with him. She can use Hantengu's abilities, but stronger. Lin Jr. loud. She was the worst of all because she was the one who caused her own brother to suffer. From making an excuse that his brother brought bad luck to taking away his dream of being in his dream movie. She forced him to wear a squirrel costume because that was an excuse that made his bad luck turn into good luck. She mercilessly killed her brother's best friend in front of him. He beat him whenever he could. He was a merciless monster. One day she lost a game and, filled with fury, she sought out her brother and beat him so badly that she broke his spine. That wasn't all. One day she saw her boyfriend kissing her best friend, which made her furious. Her boyfriend told her that she wasn't feminine at all in any way. She stole her father's liquor and drank heavily until, drunk, she looked for her brother, but not to hit him. He didn't abuse her, but no, he wasn't the one who penetrated her. She screamed that he should suffer, that he should be the one who was the failure of the family, and that he was just a mistake of this world. If it weren't for his intelligent sister, he would have died from anal bleeding. Muzin made her his right-hand woman, aside from Kakishibo, because he admired her coldness. Akaza hates her so much that she asked Muzin if he could kill her, and worse, in front of her. Unfortunately for Akaza, she is stronger. She even surpassed Dauma, but she still hasn't surpassed Kakishibo. Lin possesses immense strength, causing her opponent to weaken severely each time she strikes, and her sweat explodes like Bakugo's. Loud line. She defines herself with the simplest and most common word to describe a gold digger. Bitch. She was obsessively in love with her brother. She allowed all the mistreatment her brother received simply out of jealousy. Jealousy when other girls get close to her brother, jealousy when she sees him with another girl who isn't her sister. She touched herself many times thinking about him, and when she suffered everything I mentioned before, she cried. She cried for her brother but did nothing, the bitch. When she found out that her sisters were sleeping with him, she didn't miss the opportunity and had many encounters with her brother. She had to have 7 abortions, and she did it very often with him. If Lini abused him often, she abused him even more. She even had a threesome with him and his other sister, and they did it very often. She healed her brother's wounds, but she did so in exchange for hex and reciprocated wet kisses. Muzin initially saw her as a gold digger, but upon seeing the great team Linka and her sister made, he accepted them into his ranks. She and her sister get along very well with Jayako and are fascinated by his disturbing art, especially the mutilation of bodies. Linka can summon thorns that sprout from the ground and make the vegetation be on her side. Liberty loud. She looks just like her twin sister Linka. Both abused their brother. They even had a schedule for having hex with him. They even agreed to have threesomes with him. Neither of them hit him, but they abused him very often. She had to have 5 abortions. Both of them made deals with him to have sex with him in exchange for food or water. They showed no mercy and killed her brother's friends because they saw them as a threat. Muzan saw the team they could make, so he recruited them into his ranks. Liberty can use water and lava as weapons, and when she fights alongside Linka, they are a great threat. Lucy Loud. She performed many rituals with her brother. The cruelest was draining all his blood for a satanic ritual in the name of Muzan. She almost killed her brother without caring about anything. She was very cruel to him. Another thing he did was amputate his toes for pleasure. Muzan saw that she was a big fan of his and, feeling admired, recruited her into his ranks. She gets along very well with Nakam and they are good friends. Lucy can create fire skulls and a blue fire side that, every time it hits something, releases a vapor that disintegrates everything. Lana Loud. She hit her brother with her wrench until he broke the bones in his limbs. Her animals were turned against her by her brother and all of them were sacrificed. Lana made him eat food from the garbage and she enjoyed watching him suffer. She gets along very well with Hyoudou and they both love disgusting things. Muzan saw that she could be a good ally, so he recruited her into his ranks. She can control all the animals and insects that are near her. Bull Aloud. She was the second person who tortured her brother the most. She cut him all over his body with a knife. She used him as a guinea pig for her makeup. He was dragging him with his cart while he was tied up, being dragged along like a garbage bag. She gets along well with Daki, and both are considered the most beautiful. Muzan, seeing how blackmailing and sadistic she was, recruited her into his ranks. She can summon diamonds and gold, and everything she touches turns into a jewel. Lisa Loud. She was undoubtedly one of the people who tortured her brother the most. If the Loud sisters were ranked as the sisters who tortured their brother the most, she would be first along with Lin. She set up a camera to upload all her brother's suffering to the dark web, earning millions. They removed her organs to replace them with experimental ones, which caused her a lot of harm. They removed bones to replace them with metal pieces, claiming he would use them for the good of science. She temporarily became an 18-year-old girl to grape her brother until she became pregnant. If you think I use it for sexual pleasure, I don't use it to have an abortion and experiment on the fetus. Muzan saw how intelligent she was and hoped that she could be the one responsible for him being able to dominate the sun. So without hesitation, he recruited her into his ranks. She can clone herself 10 times and can summon any firearm she wants. Well, I included them because, as you've seen in several fanfics, the Louds are the bad guys, so I decided to include them. I'll write a fanfic about them based on this story called Nightmare and how they ended up in hell where Muzan was. The fic will be called Nightmare. Muzan's Allies Part 3. These are Muzan's last allies. Seria Ubiquitous. She is a lover of justice and does everything possible to ensure that justice prevails. But in reality, she is a miserable woman who doesn't care about good and evil. She only cares about killing under the guise of doing justice. I kill thieves who stole out of hunger or need. I kill women who sell their bodies out of necessity. I kill children who stole out of hunger or to help their sick relatives. She was murdered, but before dying she decided to commit suicide by blowing herself up. While in hell, she mercilessly killed an incredible number of people, and Hades, having no other option, sent her to the 9th circle of hell. She met Muzan and tried to kill him, but a single slap was enough to get her to join him, as she was very strong, equal to Hantengu. She became Muzan's bodyguard and kills anyone who gets close to him. Makoto I2. He's a kind guy who could charm anyone. But that's just a mask, since he's a womanizer. He let his first girlfriend and love interest suffer abuse at the hands of his classmates and be raped by his best friend. He had to flee to another state because the police were looking for him for murder, since he killed his best friend because she became pregnant with his child. He met the women of Rentaro and tried to win them over, but only received blows and slaps from them. Rentaro threatened to kill him because he accidentally touched his girlfriend Hikari's breasts and memes. The final straw was when he tried to grape Mimimi, one of his girlfriends. When Rentaro found them, he saw Mimimi without her shirt and skirt, only in her underwear, and he had his pants down. Rentaro was furious that day that none of his girlfriends stopped him, and he gave him the worst beating of his life until he beat him to death while Mimimi cried while being comforted by her harem sisters. Rentaro tortured him in many ways until he ended his life. The police did not take him to court because they considered it self-defense. He hates Rentaro just like Victoria hates Rentaro's girls. They both fight together, where he can create tornadoes at will and control the wind. Daisuke Sanaga. He's a loser who wants a girlfriend. You see him as normal, but he's not. He mercilessly raped his best friend's girlfriend. He had to flee to another state because he was wanted for rape and changed his name. He arrived in the same state where Tadano lives, where he created a false identity. He fell in love with Komi, one of Tadano's partners. He tried to do the same thing he did with his best friend's girlfriend, but he didn't expect what happened next. Tadano saw his girlfriend with her breasts exposed and her underwear on the floor, and he was ready to abuse her. Unfortunately for him, one of his admirers, who was the most deranged, saw this. Tadano and she agreed that they ended up killing Taisuke. He hates Tadano because it was because of him that he couldn't do what he wanted to do with Komi. He can use electricity at will and can summon lightning. Note. Sometimes I wonder why people don't hate this guy. I hate Mikoto, but this idiot is the one who raped Kotonoha. Anyway, the hypotenuse. Diodora Asterisk. He was a high-class demon who tried to conquer Asia but failed. Asia was kidnapped and Issei and the others had to save her. Diodora ended up provoking Issei, who then gave Diodora the worst beating, ultimately killing him. Note. In this story, Issei killed Diodora instead of Shalba. She hates Issei like never before and in hell she gained new abilities. One of them is that if you cut it or hurt it, it can absorb that pain. Fried Selson. He is a psychopath who kills demons for pleasure. He killed many demons until he was killed by Kiba. In hell, he improved his swordsmanship to the point that he learned breathing techniques from Kagaku and Kakushibo. He learned the breath of lightning, where he kills at great speed. These would all be Musen's allies, of course, and also the common demons. Breathing Part 1. These are the allies who will fight against Ken, Morden, Amadeus, and Musen. Issei Hyoudou. Breathing. Solar and Dragon. By training with Tanjiro, he was able to master the 13 solar breathing forms. But he also decided to do another variation of solar breathing called dragon breathing, which consists of 7 postures. First stance. Dragon scales. This consists of making several vertical and horizontal cuts, creating a defense against any attack. Second stance. Dragon's claws. This consists of making 6 quick left and right slashes in an X shape, causing the demon to take some time to regenerate. Third stance. Hellfire flames. This involves moving very quickly towards the demon, making a cut that, if successful, will take a very long time to regenerate. Fourth position. Abyss of Perdition. It consists of a circular cut, revealing a burning hole for a moment, making it difficult for the demon to move. Fifth form. Tearing. This consists of making many cuts towards the demon, destroying its body. An example is what Takedo did to Gyako at the end, but the difference is that the opponent or demon feels all the cuts before dying. Sixth form. Eyes of the Red Emperor. This form focuses on the eyes, as all the blood rushes to them when using this breathing technique. Your eyes turn green, and you can see in slow motion for 30 seconds enough to kill your opponent. The downside of using this breathing technique is that if you overuse it, your eyes can explode from the blood pressure. Seventh form. Sekiryuutei. This form would be the end for the demon or opponent, since no matter what you do or try, it is impossible to evade or dodge, nor can it be blocked. It is like the 13th form of the solar breath, but the difference is that it turns the opponent's body to dust, leaving nothing behind. The downside is that it can only be used once, because if you use it twice, the one who uses it suffers the consequences. Futuro Usugi. Breathing. Wind and Spear. Futuro, while training with Tsunemi, learned to use wind breathing, but inspired by his powers, he decided to create another variant of wind breathing called spear breathing, with 5 forms. First stance. Spear thrusts. This consists of making several thrusts at the demon, causing it to take a few minutes to regenerate. Second stance. Roman spears. This involves moving at high speed, cutting your opponent anywhere, simulating spear damage. Third stance. Guardian of the Princesses. This consists of making 5 equal cuts vertically and horizontally, causing great damage. He was inspired by his girlfriends, the quintuplets, to create this stance. Fourth stance. Spear Brilliance. This consists of squeezing the katana until it turns crimson with a great brilliance, causing everyone to be blinded for a few moments, which he takes advantage of. Fifth stance. Undying. This consists of throwing the katana at the demon, destroying it with the heat it emits. The downside is that it can only be used once, and if you fail, it's the end for you. However, this stance is very powerful, as even Hantengu, fueled by his hatred, would be unable to regenerate even if he tried and would be destroyed. Brentaro Iho. Breathing Sound. Brentaro trained like never before with Yuzui, who taught him his sound stances and how to make his girlfriends happy. He was inspired and created 2 more postures to the sound breathing, surprising Yuzui with his talent, since he could only do the 5 known postures. Yuzui gave his katanas to Rentaro so that he could fight with them. Sixth stance. Cuts of the Fallen. It consists of making several cuts in the air, but no, it's not that it's pointless, since the demon can feel the cuts you made in the air on his body. You can even cut off his head without him noticing. Seventh stance. War. This stance consists of clashing both katanas together several times, where the sound they make damages the demon. They can even cut through the sound of the clashing katanas. Ryota Suzui. Breathing. Rock. The training was very tough with Jayami, which pushed him to his physical limits, but inspired, he decided to do 2 more rock breathing poses, surprising Jayami. 6th stance. Meteorites. This consists of making the flail create destructive chaos, simulating a meteor shower that wreaks havoc on the battlefield and severely damages the demon. This stance rivals the moon breathing in its final form. 7th stance. Avalanche. This consists of making the axe and flail spin continuously. No demon can deflect or evade the attack. Saji Genshuru. Breathing. Snake. Saji trained very hard with Iguro, who trained him relentlessly. They get along very well because they both love and protect their partners. In Iguro's case, Mitsuri. Saji created 2 more forms of the snake breathing technique, leaving Iguro speechless. 6th stance. Vitra's Serpent. This stance involves moving very quickly through demons and cutting off their heads before they can react. It's useful against waves of demons and can kill up to 30 low-level demons. 7th stance. Vitra. This stance is very fast, as it consists of making 5 circular cuts, like a snake circling its prey, making 5 cuts that would make it difficult for a demon to escape the attack. Tadano Hitohito. Breathing. Fog and weapons. Tadano trained like never before with Takedo, who was surprised by Tadano's potential. Not wanting to abandon his weapon skills, he decided to create a breathing technique based on weapons, not katanas. Takedo was surprised to see Tadano perform a variant of the mist breathing technique. Tadano called his breathing technique the 7-form weapon breathing technique. 1st stance. Hitler's shots. This consists of having both pistols fire 2 shots towards the head, killing the demon, regardless of whether it was decapitated. 2nd position. School shooting. It consists of firing uncontrollably with an M5 like a demon, those who feel great pain with each bullet. 3rd stance. 9 to 11. It consists of firing 2 shots with a bazooka, causing serious damage to the demon. 4th position. Hiroshima and Nagasaki. This position is the most dangerous of all, as it consists of using nuclear grenades that he himself created, destroying an entire army or even an entire city. 5th stance. Dictatorship. This consists of using 2 machine guns firing at the demons, who prefer to commit suicide rather than endure this stance any longer. 6th stance. Invasion. This consists of firing shotguns at the demons, who feel enormous pain. 7th stance. Extinction. This stance is the most dangerous for both demons and allies, as it consists of firing all available weapons until the demon is destroyed. The downside of this stance is that Tadano cannot distinguish between his allies and demons. He has to do it alone. Naoto Hachioji. Breathing. Beast and Saw. Naoto pushed his body to its limits, revealing its incredible flexibility, allowing him to stretch his legs and arms to their full potential. Inspired by his newfound power, Naoto decided to create a variant of the beast breathing technique, leaving Inosuke proud as he witnessed this new and improved version of the beast breathing. Naoto was able to perform 5 saw breathing stances, which equaled Issei's dragon breathing. 1st position. Tear apart. This consists of making several cuts to the demon, tearing its body apart. 2nd position. Lumberjack cuts. This consists of making 2 cuts, one to the left and one to the right, using 2 chainsaw cuts. 3rd stance. Chainsaw thrusts. This consists of making several thrusts with the katana, which the demon can feel instead of a katana, using a chainsaw. 4th form. Eyes of Control. This form concentrates blood in the eyes, causing the user to see in slow motion for 30 seconds. It's similar to the 6th form of the dragon, but Naoto doesn't suffer the consequences since it doesn't affect his eyes. However, it does affect his lungs. If used for an extended period, his lungs could explode. 5th form. Chainsaw Man. This form is Inosuke's favorite because only he can use it. It allows Naoto to use his supernatural powers for 20 seconds. Even if the demon can block his powers, he can still use them for that time, giving him a chance to fight Muzan. Shido Itsuka. Breathing. Sniper. Shido's teacher was Tomioka, who taught him water breathing, but he was unable to use it. Shido was disappointed in himself because he wasn't as much of a tank as Issei, as determined as Futaro, as brave as Rentaro, as fast as Naoto, or as strong as Ryota. He was the weakest of the boys, and frustrated by his weakness, he used his sniper rifle, which eventually allowed him to create a stance with his weapon. Shido was surprised because he created a variant of the water breathing technique, which he called the sniper breathing technique with 5 stances. 1st stance. Precise shot. This consists of taking a direct shot to the demon's neck, which can kill it even if it hasn't been decapitated. 2nd stance. Spartan arrows. This consists of firing several shots at the demons, which take time to regenerate after being shot. Third stance. Explosive bullet. This consists of firing a bullet that, upon touching the demon, immediately explodes, causing great damage or killing it. Fourth position. Last heartbeat. This consists of shooting the demon in the heart. It doesn't kill him, but he feels a great pain in his heart that begs to be killed. Fifth stance. Death Pact. This consists of firing a shot that hits the demon and kills it, no matter where you hit it. The downside of this stance is that using it requires sacrificing an organ. It's the price you pay for using this stance. Rias Gremory. Breath. Love and destruction. Rias had a hard time learning the breath of love because of how flexible you had to be. Mitsuri tortured her a lot with flexibility, stretching her to the point of becoming very flexible. Rias continued training because every day she saw a picture of herself and Issei on their first date and it inspired her to keep training. Rias decided to create a new breathing style, a variant of the breath of love, called the breath of destruction, with 5 forms, matching Issei's dragon breath. This left Mitsuri amazed by Rias' talent. First stance. Chaos. This stance involves making a horizontal slash, destroying trees, rocks, and even vegetation. It can also cut a demon in half. The downside of this stance is that it affects allies near the demon as well, so to use it, no allies should be near the demon. Second stance. Death Cuts. This consists of making 2 cuts, one to the right and one to the left, which Rias can use for defense or attack. Third stance. Possessed Cut. This consists of moving very quickly towards the demon, making a cut from below and above, making 2 cuts to the demon. An example is what Sasaki did to Possessed in his first attack. Fourth stance. Two-handed Cut. This consists of making 1 cut with the left hand and another with the right hand, making 2 cuts that severely damage the demon, as they feel as if their body is burning. Fifth form. Crimson Queen. This form is the most powerful, equaling the 13th form of the solar breathing technique. It consists of performing all the forms of the breath of love, along with the breath of destruction, inflicting fatal damage on the demon. Even Kakishiba would struggle to recover from this attack. The downside of this form is its difficulty. You have to be very quick, as any mistake would be very costly. Furthermore, using this form leaves you extremely tired. Akeno Himalima. Breathing. Ray. Akeno trained very hard with Zenitsu, who taught her so well that Akeno now saw Zenitsu as her master and Nezuko as a younger sister. Akeno's inspiration was a photo of her and Issei at the amusement park holding hands. She mastered the 6 forms of lightning breathing very well as the 7th form created by her master, but she also decided to create 2 more forms of lightning breathing, surprising Zenitsu and Nezuko, who was thrilled to see them. 8th stance. Tesla Storm. It consists of moving extremely fast, making left and right slashes that cause great damage. 9th stance. Zeus. It consists of jumping into the air and descending at great speed, making a horizontal and a vertical cut, where the demon can see Zeus himself for a few seconds before dying. Asia Silver. Breathing. Insect and Sky. Asia trained very hard with the goal of making Issei proud, and she was further inspired by a photo of herself with Issei on a date at the amusement park. Shinobu felt very proud of Asia because, unlike her, Asia could decapitate demons, and she was even more surprised to see that Asia created a new breathing variant of the insect breathing technique with 5 stances. First stance. Angels of Heaven. This involves jumping upwards and making several upward slashes that affect the demon, even if you miss. It's similar to the 6th stance of Rentaro's Breath of Sound. Second stance. Hell's Angels. This involves digging into the ground and entering. It doesn't make sense, but in reality, the opponent creates a space with their katana where they make several cuts at nothing. These are actually ranged attacks that they hit the demon from the ground. Third stance. Water. This consists of making several cuts in the water, where the water becomes your ally and hurts the demon upon contact. Asia found it very difficult to create this stance, as it was very hard to make the water her ally. Fourth stance. Trumpets of Heaven. In this stance, the katana is not used, as it relies on the scream. The person using this stance must let out a great scream, causing the demon so much pain that it even bleeds from the ears. Fifth stance. Final Judgment. In this stance, you must make several cuts to the demon to the point that it cannot regenerate. It doesn't make sense at first, but the true attack is that the demon will not be able to regenerate no matter what it does. It will have to fight without limbs or with limbs that cannot regenerate due to those cuts. Kaneko Toiho. Breathing. Flowers and Nico. Kaneko trained with Kanao, who was surprised by Kaneko's great talent as she not only trained very hard but also created a new breathing technique, a variant of the flower breathing technique. Her inspiration was a photo of her and Issei on a date at a candy store which she looked at every single day without fail, and she worked hard for Issei. I call her breathing the Nico breathing with 5 postures. First stance. Locator. This involves sensing your surroundings to locate someone. It's similar to using beast breath to locate demons. Second stance. Nico cut. It consists of 3 cuts both above and below, meaning it makes a total of 6 cuts to the opponent. Third stance. Flames of the Yaokai. This consists of making several circular cuts, causing serious damage to the demon. Fourth stance. Stealing. This involves stabbing the opponent and stealing some of their energy, making it your own. It's very difficult to do, but it can be done. Fifth stance. Doomed. This consists of literally stealing your opponent's weapon and making its abilities your own. It's a cruel technique, but if the opponent doesn't understand, they have no choice but to be condemned to be trapped in the katana for all eternity. Zenobia the fourth. Breathing. Demon. Zenobia was the only one who couldn't learn any breathing techniques, which frustrated her. She cried in frustration upon realizing she would be useless in the fight and was even more disappointed that she wouldn't be able to help Issei, which devastated her. Genyu explained to her that he couldn't learn the breathing technique either, which disappointed her, not in him since he was a good teacher, but in herself because of her weakness. Issei had to pause his training and go comfort Zenobia, where he made her feel like she was in heaven by telling her how special she was and that it didn't matter if she didn't learn a breathing technique, he would always love her for who she was. Zenobia decided to push herself to the limit and while practicing in the hopes of learning a breathing technique, she accidentally created a new breathing technique. Both she and Genyu were surprised to see that Zenobia was able to create a breathing technique variant of rock breathing. Zenobia decided to practice with her new breathing technique and created 5 postures, which she called demonic breathing. He also had a theory. If he ate demons, he could become stronger. It was an extreme risk, but his theory was that if he ate demons, he could gain supernatural abilities. He would do it when the demons arrived, no matter the cost, if it meant becoming stronger. First stance. Demonic laughter. It consists of making a circular cut causing great damage. Second stance. Lucifer's meteorites. This consists of turning the flail upwards and throwing it to the ground, creating a great chaos of destruction. Third stance. Chain of punishment. This consists of turning his chains around himself, preventing any demon from being on the ground. The downside is that this stance also affects his allies. Fourth stance. Tartar's claws. This consists of taking the axe and flail and making 3 cuts vertically, horizontally, upwards and downwards. Fifth position. Meat seeds. Arena Shido. Breathing. Flower and sky. Arena trained very hard with Kani, who was speechless at Arena's great talent as she didn't have much trouble learning her breathing technique. I also trained with Asia, who taught me her breathing technique, which I also tried, but it was very difficult for me to learn Asia's breathing. Finally, after a long time, she was able to learn Asian breathing techniques. Ravel Phoenix. Breathing. Flame and Phoenix. Ravel trained very hard with the goal of surprising Issei, leaving Rengoku astonished. Rengoku saw Ravel's great potential. He said that without a doubt this new generation would be the strongest of all and would kill Muzan and his moons again. Ravel was fascinated by Rengoku's breathing and decided to create a dignified breathing technique. After much effort, Ravel created the Phoenix breathing, matching the solar breathing and leaving Rengoku speechless. Phoenix breathing had 5 stances with great damage. First stance. Immortal. This stance allows you to heal yourself if the demon damages you, but it has limits. Second stance. Flames. This consists of rotating the katana vertically from left to right, causing great damage. Third stance. Phoenix flight. It consists of jumping very high and descending at great speed, making a circular cut that causes great damage to the opponent or demon. Fourth stance. Phoenix elegance. It consists of making many cuts to the demon's attacks, destroying their attacks. Fifth form. Phoenix block. This form is very powerful because if Ravel uses it, he literally blocks the abilities of demons. Not even Akaza, Dauma or Kakishibo can counter this ability. Sarafel Leviathan. Breathing. Water and ice. Sarafel trained very hard with Tomioka, surprising him to see how someone could master this breathing technique and even more so when he saw that she was able to create a new water breathing stance and create her own unique breathing style. 12th stance. Twin dragons. This stance consists of making 2 spinning cuts to the left and right, dealing great damage. Now the breath of the ice. First stance. North cold. This consists of making a very quick upward cut, leaving the demons defenseless. Second position. Cold south. It consists of making a downward cut, severing the demon's legs. Third stance. East and west cold. This consists of making 2 cuts, left and right, causing a lot of damage. Fourth stance. Ice Age. This consists of stabbing the demon's body, leaving it paralyzed and unable to move. The downside is that it doesn't last long, but it's enough to kill it. Sona Sitri. Respiration. Water and vapor. Sona trained similarly with Tomioka, where she was able to master water breathing, but she couldn't do the breathing technique that Sarafel created. Inspired by his power, she created a new variant form of water breathing, leaving Tomioka speechless. Although Sona created a new breathing technique, she could only create 3 postures. First stance. Contain vapor. This consists of making a large vertical cut, cutting everything, just like Rias with her first stance of Breath of Destruction. Second stance. Burning steam. This consists of making a horizontal cut, cutting everything in its path, just like the first one. Third stance. Burning. This involves moving very quickly so the opponent can't see you and making a large number of cuts. For example, if she used this stance against Kakishibo, he would have trouble countering. Hyoudou. Breathing. Dragon. Like Zenobia, he couldn't learn the breathing style, which frustrated him, but Issei taught him his breathing technique, allowing him to learn Issei's breathing style, although using it affected him more than Issei did. Asper to the government. Breathing. Vampires. Asper trained with Tsunemi, who pushed him to his limits along with Futuro. Asper couldn't learn the wind breathing technique. Despite being strong, he couldn't learn the wind breathing style. So, seeing that Futuro performed a variation of the wind breathing technique, he decided to create a new breathing technique, and although it was difficult, he was able to. He created the vampire breathing variant of wind breathing, leaving Tsunemi speechless, who saw that it had great potential. First stance. Darkness. This consists of cutting the demon's eyes, temporarily blinding him. Second stance. Vampire teeth. This involves making a cut to the demon's neck, although it is difficult to do. If you succeed, you will weaken the demon. Third position. Time. It consists of the person literally paralyzing everything around them, allowing them to move freely over everyone. It's as if Gasper were using his power but wasn't. Bali Lucifer. Breathing. Dragon. Bali couldn't use solar breathing, which frustrated him, but Issei taught him dragon breathing, which he learned, although he strives to become a better user of this breathing technique than Issei. Breathing Part 2. Okay, here's Part 2 of the breathing exercises that the rest would use. Hiroka still. Breathing Nico. Hiroka trained very hard but couldn't learn the flower breathing technique, so she learned the Nico breathing technique with Kaneko's help, where they both fight together. Prohibition. Breathing. She trained with Roberto, who wasn't gentle with her, teaching her everything. She created a breathing technique, the nature of which is unknown except to Roberto, who claimed that Yasaka's breathing was equivalent to solar breathing. Nod. Breathing flame. She also decided to train to make Issei proud of her, so she trained with Ringoku, who gladly accepted, but it took a lot of work to convince Yasaka to let her daughter train. It only took a few nights of pleasure from Issei and 2 weeks in a wheelchair for Yasaka to accept, on the condition that Issei and Tanjiro would train her, which they both agreed to. She became an expert at learning flame breathing, leaving Ringoku amazed at Kunu's enormous potential. Office. Breathing. Dragon and. She trained with Issei, who taught her the dragon breathing technique. She trained to learn the same technique as Issei, but she also created a new variant of the dragon breathing technique, which is unknown to everyone except Roberto and Gran Rojo. Ingvald Leviathan. Breathing. Dragon and sound. She trained alongside Issei, learning the dragon breathing technique, but also decided to learn the sound breathing technique, which Yuzui gladly taught her. Gabriel. Breathing. Sky. She trained alongside Asia, who taught her the breath of heaven, which she learned thanks to Asia. She was a prodigy with katanas, according to Shinobu. Enemu. Breathing. Snake. She trained very hard with Aguro, who taught her a lot, but it wasn't as rigorous as with Saji. Penemu learned the snake breathing technique, making Aguro proud of her potential. Ichikawa Kaiotaro. Breathing. Death. This boy was recruited by Israel, Roberto's right-hand man, who saw a hidden power he possessed. He trained with Jayami, who taught him the breath of the rock, but he couldn't learn it. Instead, he created a new breathing technique, the breath of death, a variant of the breath of the rock. First stance. Last breath. It consists of making a horizontal cut, causing great damage to the demon. Second stance. Death skulls. This consists of making many defensive and offensive cuts, causing great damage. Third stance. Trenches of death. This involves jumping around, leaving several holes in the area, and these affect the demons. Fourth stance. Scythe of death. It consists of making a scythe-shaped cut causing great damage. Fifth stance. Death. This stance marks the end of the demon, as no matter what it does, it will be the end of the demon. If it tries to defend itself, it will be useless. The bad thing about this stance is that it is a double-edged sword, as it not only affects the demon, but also the one who uses it. If you don't perform this stance perfectly, there is a 90% chance that you will die, as you will feel your lungs explode. Yamada Anna. Breath. Love. Like Ichikawa, she was recruited by Israel where she trained with Mitsuri and Rias, learning the breath of love. Her performance was so impressive that she created a new version of the breath of love posture. 7th stance. Eternal love. It consists of making a large number of heart-shaped cuts, causing enormous damage to the demon and those nearby. Beni Orcus. Breathing. Death. She trained with Jayami, who taught her his breathing technique, but she couldn't learn the rock breathing technique. However, upon seeing that Ichikawa had created a new variant breathing technique, she decided to ask for his help. He taught her his technique and she learned the breath of death. The Fey Pendragon. Respiration. Insect. Being the weakest in Issei's harem physically, she decided to train with Shinobu, who taught her insect breathing and how to create poison. She then decided to create a new insect breathing stance, much to the surprise of Shinobu and the others. 5th stance. Dragon Dance. This consists of performing several jumps around the area and slashing the demon, causing it great pain thanks to the special poison used by Lefay. Elmenhold Karnstein. Breathing. Vampire. She trained with Sanemi, who wasn't too harsh on her because she was a woman, but she couldn't learn the breath of the wind. However, Gaspar taught her the breathing technique he created and she learned the vampire breathing technique thanks to him. Homishako. Breathing. Silence. She trained with Mitsuri where she couldn't learn Ria's breath of love or breath of destruction. She was very frustrated, but seeing that some created new breathing techniques, she thought, why don't I create my own too? So she created the breath of silence, a variant of the breath of love. 1st stance. Without sound. This consists of making a cut without any sound so that the demon cannot hear the stance that was made. 2nd stance. Forest of Silence. This stance consists of making several silent cuts. It is useful for large armies as it kills many hordes of weak demons. 4th stance. The Silent Treatment. This consists of making 2 cuts, one above and one below, where the demon will not notice that it was cut by this stance. Undoubtedly, breath that makes no sound rivals breath that makes sound. Renyamai. Breathing. Silence. Being madly in love with Komi, she learned the same breathing technique. It took her many years to learn, but she mastered it with great effort. However, later on, she would become someone even more hated than she already was. Najimi Asana. Breathing. Fog. She trained with Takedo and Tadano, and with great effort, she learned the breath of mist, which surprised Takedo, who still had doubts about whether she was a woman or a man. Nagatoro Hayes. Breathing. Beast. She trained alongside Naoto and Inosuke, and thanks to her flexibility, she learned the beast breathing technique, surprising them both when they saw Nagatoro master it. Amomaki. Breathing Flame. She trained with Ringoku, who gladly taught her the breathing of the flame, at which she excelled. Yashi. Breathing. Flowers. She trained with Kanao, where she got along very well with Kaneko, and where she learned the flower breathing technique very well. Sana Sunamiya. Breath. Love. She trained alongside Mitsuri, where she quickly learned the breath of love, becoming a great prodigy in this technique. Hana Sunamiya. Breathing. Saw. She decided to learn Naoto's breathing technique to follow in her beloved's footsteps, where she was a great prodigy at following this breathing technique, although she could not use the last posture of the saw breath. Let me know in the comments below if you guys want the next part. Also check out my other video that has been shown and left. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video please like and share this video. And have a fantastic day. Bye.